Story 1. I let my struggling sister move in with us. She repaid me by sleeping with my husband. 2 years later, they want to make amends. I never thought I'd be in this situation, but here I am. My name is Olivia, 28F, and I've been married to Tyler, 30M, for 5 years. We met during our sophomore year of college when we were paired up for a group project in our economics class. I remember being struck by his easy smile and quick wit. We spent long nights in the library working on our project and getting to know each other. By the time we turned in our final presentation, I was head over heels. Our relationship wasn't always smooth sailing. We had our fair share of arguments and misunderstandings, especially during our senior year when the stress of job hunting and graduation loomed over us. But we always managed to work through our issues, coming out stronger on the other side. When we both landed jobs in the same city after graduation, it felt like fate. We moved in together, and 2 years later, Tyler proposed during a weekend trip to the beach where we had our first vacation together. The first few years of our marriage were blissful. We were young, in love, and building our life together. We had date nights every Friday, took cooking classes together, and even started a small vegetable garden on our apartment balcony. Tyler was always thoughtful, surprising me with little gifts or planning weekend getaways. I thought we had it all figured out. About a year ago, my younger sister, Amy, 24F, moved in with us. Amy and I have always been close, despite our 4-year age gap. Growing up, I was her protector, the one she came to with scraped knees or broken hearts. When our parents divorced during Amy's senior year of high school, I became even more of a parental figure to her, helping her navigate college applications and move into her dorm. Amy had just graduated with a degree in graphic design but was struggling to find a job in her field. She was working part-time at a coffee shop, barely making enough to cover her student loan payments. When I saw how stressed and defeated she looked during our weekly video calls, I couldn't bear it. Without much thought, I offered her our spare room until she got back on her feet. Tyler wasn't thrilled about the idea. He valued our privacy and was concerned about how having Amy around might affect our relationship. But after seeing how important it was to me, he agreed. I was so grateful for his understanding, and I promised it would only be temporary. First, everything seemed fine. Amy was a model house guest, helping with chores and even cooking dinner for us a few times a week. She was actively job hunting and would excitedly share any promising leads with us over dinner. I was proud of how hard she was working and felt good about being able to help her during this tough time. Tyler and Amy seemed to get along well, too. They discovered a shared love for obscure indie bands and would often spend evenings listening to records and discussing music. They even started going to yoga classes together a few times a week. I was happy to see my husband and sister bonding, thinking how lucky I was to have two of the most important people in my life getting along so well. But as months passed, I started noticing subtle changes in Tyler's behavior. He began coming home late from work, sometimes smelling faintly of alcohol. When I asked him about it, he brushed it off, saying he was just having a few drinks with colleagues to unwind. I tried not to think much of it, focusing instead on my own career and helping Amy with her job search. I had my own stresses to deal with at work. I'd recently taken on a big project that required long hours and lots of travel. There were weeks when Tyler and I barely saw each other, just passing like ships in the night. I felt guilty about neglecting our relationship, but I thought we were strong enough to weather this temporary rough patch. Last week was our 5th wedding anniversary. Tyler had been acting strange for days leading up to it, but I assumed he was planning a surprise. On the day of our anniversary, I managed to leave work early, excited to spend the evening with my husband. As I walked into our apartment, I heard muffled voices coming from our bedroom. My heart racing, I quietly made my way to the door. What I heard next shattered my world. It was Tyler and Amy talking in hushed tones. Amy was saying, "We can't keep doing this, Tyler. It's wrong. My sister, my husband." Tyler replied, "I know, but I can't help how I feel about you. We'll figure something out." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My husband and my sister. How long had this been going on? I felt sick to my stomach, memories of the past few months flashing through my mind. All those late nights at work, the yoga sessions, the hushed conversations that stopped when I entered the room. It all made a horrifying kind of sense now. Without thinking, I burst into the room. The looks on their faces confirmed my worst fears. Tyler jumped up, stammering, "Olivia, it's not what you think." Amy just sat there, her face pale with shock. I noticed her shirt was unbuttoned. Tyler's hair was messed up. The evidence was undeniable. I don't remember much of what happened next. There was a lot of shouting, crying, and accusations. I demanded answers, but their explanations were just excuses. They claimed it had only been going on for a few months, that they never meant for it to happen. But how could I believe anything they said? I left the apartment that night, grabbing whatever clothes I could stuff into a bag. I called my best friend, Emma, sobbing so hard she could barely understand me. She immediately told me to come over, no questions asked. I've been staying with her for a week now, trying to process everything. Tyler has been calling and texting nonstop, begging for forgiveness. His messages swing wildly between apologizing profusely and blaming me for being distant lately. Amy sent me a long email explaining how sorry she was and how she'd move out immediately. She said she never meant to hurt me, that it just happened. But I don't know if I can ever forgive either of them. I feel so betrayed, not just by Tyler but by Amy, too. She was my little sister, the person I'd always protected and looked out for. I remembered all the times I defended her to our parents, how I'd helped her move into her college dorm, how I'd stayed up late helping her with her resume, and this is how she repaid me. And Tyler, the man I thought I'd spend the rest of my life with, how could he do this to me? I thought back to our wedding day, how he teared up as he recited his vows, promising to love and cherish me forever. Was it all a lie? How long had he been attracted to Amy? Was I just a placeholder until something better came along? I'm lost and don't know what to do. Part of me wants to try and salvage my marriage, thinking maybe we could work through this. We've been through tough times before, though nothing like this. But another part of me knows I'll never be able to trust Tyler again. How could I ever look at him without wondering if he's thinking about my sister? And as for Amy, I can't even bear to think about her right now. The betrayal feels even deeper coming from her. She was family, the person I trusted most in the world after Tyler. Now I feel like I've lost them both. I've always been the strong one in my family, the one everyone else relied on. When our parents divorced, I was the one who held it together, comforting Amy and mediating between our parents. But now I feel weak and vulnerable. I'm scared of what the future holds. Will I ever be able to trust anyone again? How do I move forward from this? I know I need to make a decision soon. Do I try to work things out with Tyler? Do I file for divorce? And what about Amy? Can I ever have a relationship with my sister again after this betrayal? The thought of family gatherings in the future makes me feel sick. How can I face our parents and explain what happened? My friends have been supportive, offering advice and shoulders to cry on. But they're all as shocked as I am, unsure of how to help. Emma has suggested I see a therapist, but the thought of rehashing this story to a stranger feels overwhelming right now. Work has been a welcome distraction, but I know I can't hide there forever. My boss has noticed something's wrong and has been understanding, but I know I'll have to face reality soon. Any advice would be appreciated. I feel so alone right now and could use some outside perspective. Has anyone else been through something similar? How did you cope? How did you move forward? Thank you for reading this long post. Writing it all out has been cathartic in a way, but it's also made everything feel so much more real. I guess I'm just looking for some support and guidance as I navigate this nightmare. Update 1. It's been 3 months since my last post, and I wanted to give an update on my situation. First, I want to thank everyone who commented and sent messages of support. Your words meant more to me than you could know during that dark time. After much soul-searching and several painful conversations with both Tyler and Amy, I've made some decisions. I filed for divorce from Tyler. As much as it hurts, I know I could never trust him again, and without trust, there's no foundation for a marriage. The betrayal was too deep, the wound too raw to heal. The decision wasn't easy. Tyler and I had one last long talk at a neutral location, a park where we used to have picnics in the early days of our relationship. He cried, begged for another chance, swore he'd do anything to make it right. For a moment, Looking at him in the same spot where he'd once proposed, I almost wavered. But then I remembered the look on his face when I caught him with Amy, and I knew there was no going back. The divorce proceedings have been difficult. Tyler initially tried to contest it, claiming he made a mistake and wanted to work things out. He even suggested couples therapy. But I couldn't imagine sitting in a room with him and a therapist, rehashing the betrayal over and over. I told him that his actions had consequences, and this was one of them. Eventually, he agreed to an uncontested divorce which should be finalized in a few months. As for Amy, our relationship is complicated. I've had several long, painful conversations with her. The first one was over the phone, about a month after everything happened. I was still so angry I could barely speak without shouting. She listened, cried, apologized over and over. She told me things I didn't want to hear, how it started, how long it had been going on. It was like reopening the wound all over again. Amy moved out of the city, taking a job offer in another state. She says she needs time to work on herself and figure out who she is. Part of me is relieved she's gone, but another part misses my little sister. I keep thinking back to when we were kids, how she used to follow me around like a puppy, how I taught her to apply makeup, how I helped her get ready for her first date. It's hard to reconcile those memories with what she's done. The hardest part of all this has been telling our family. Our parents were devastated. Mom cried for hours when I told her, asking over and over how this could have happened. Dad got angry, threatening to disown Amy. It's caused a rift in the family with some taking sides. Aunt Sarah insists I should try to forgive Tyler, while Uncle Mike thinks I should press charges for adultery. It's painful to see, but I know it's not my responsibility to fix it. I've moved out of the apartment Tyler and I shared. Too many memories there. I found a small studio across town and have been slowly making it my own. It's strange living alone after all these years, but also liberating in a way. I'm rediscovering who I am outside of being a wife and a sister. I've started painting again, something I gave up when work got busy. My little studio is slowly filling up with canvases, abstract pieces full of dark, swirling colors. It's not great art, but it helps me process my emotions. Work has been my saving grace through all this. I've thrown myself into my job, taking on extra projects and responsibilities. My boss has been understanding, giving me flexibility when I needed it for lawyer appointments or therapy sessions. I've even been considered for a promotion, which is both exciting and terrifying. Part of me wonders if I'm ready for more responsibility when my personal life is such a mess. Yes, I've started therapy. It was hard at first, admitting I needed help, but it's been incredibly beneficial. My therapist has been helping me work through my feelings of betrayal and anger, and helping me build my self-esteem back up. We've been exploring why I always felt the need to be the strong one in my family and how that might have affected my relationships. I've also started reconnecting with old friends, people I had drifted away from during my marriage. Their support has been invaluable. We've had movie nights, gone for hikes, and just spent time talking. It's reminded me that there are still good people in the world, people I can trust. Last weekend, my college roommate Sarah visited. We stayed up all night drinking wine and reminiscing about simpler times. Felt good to laugh again. There are still hard days. Days when I wake up and, for a split second, forget everything that's happened. Days when I see a happy couple on the street and feel a pang of what I've lost. Days when a song comes on the radio that Tyler and I used to dance to, and I have to pull over because I'm crying too hard to drive. But those days are becoming fewer and farther between. I'm not ready to think about dating again. The thought of trusting someone enough to be in a relationship seems impossible right now. A guy at work asked me out for coffee last week, and I nearly had a panic attack. My therapist says that's normal, that I need time to heal before I can open myself up again. For now, I'm focusing on my friendships and rebuilding my relationship with myself. As for the future, I'm trying to take it one day at a time. I'm learning to be okay with not having all the answers. I'm learning that it's okay to be angry, to be sad, to be confused. I'm learning that healing isn't linear, and that's okay, too. For now, I'm focusing on healing, on rebuilding my life on my own terms. It's not the life I had planned, but I'm determined to make it a good one. Thank you again for all your support. it means more than you know. Update 2. It's been a year since my world turned upside down, and I wanted to share another update. So much has changed, and yet, in some ways, I feel like I'm still processing everything that happened. The divorce was finalized 6 months ago. It was a strange feeling signing those papers. Part of me felt relieved, like I was finally closing a painful chapter of my life. Another part felt sad, mourning the future I thought I'd have. But mostly I felt free. The day after the divorce was final, I went skydiving. It was terrifying and exhilarating, and as I floated back to Earth, I felt like I could breathe again for the first time in months. Tyler moved out of state shortly after the divorce was final. Last I heard, he was living with his parents and trying to find himself. I wish I could say I don't care, but sometimes I still find myself wondering about him. Not because I want him back, that ship has long sailed, but because I'm trying to understand how someone I thought I knew so well could betray me so deeply. My therapist says this is normal, that closure doesn't always come in the form we expect. As for Amy, our relationship is still strained. We've had a few phone calls, mostly on holidays or birthdays. It's awkward and painful, but we're trying. She's still in therapy, working through her own issues. She's apologized countless times, but I'm not sure I'm ready to forgive her yet. Maybe someday, but not now. Last month, she sent me a letter. In it, she explained more about what was going on in her life when everything happened. She talked about feeling lost after college, about struggling with depression and alcohol abuse. It doesn't excuse what she did, but it helps me understand a little better. On a brighter note, my career has taken off. All that extra work I threw myself into paid off. I got a big promotion 3 months ago. I'm now leading my own team on a major project. It's challenging and sometimes stressful, but I love it. It's given me a sense of purpose and accomplishment that I really needed. Last week, I gave a presentation to the company's board of directors. As I stood there confidently explaining our strategy, I realized how far I've come from the broken person I was a year ago. I've also started dating again, which has been interesting. My first few attempts were disasters. There was the guy who spent the entire day talking about his ex, the one who asked if I was damaged goods because of my divorce, and the one who I'm pretty sure was just looking for a free meal. I was so scared of being hurt again that I kept everyone at arm's length. But after some more therapy and a lot of self-reflection, I've started to open up more. There's one guy, Alex, 32M, who I've been seeing for about 2 months now. We met at a local art gallery opening. He's an architect with a passion for abstract expressionism. He's kind, funny, and patient. He knows about my past and understands when I need to take things slow. It's too early to say where it's going, but for the first time in a long time, I'm excited about the possibility of a future with someone. Last weekend, he surprised me with a picnic in the park. As we sat there laughing and talking, I realized I hadn't thought about Tyler or Amy all day. Felt like progress. I've made some new friends, too. I joined a local book club and a hiking group. It's been great to meet people who don't know me as the girl whose husband cheated with her sister. They just know me as Olivia, and that's refreshing. Last month, we did a challenging 10-mile hike. As I stood at the summit, looking out over the valley, I felt a sense of accomplishment and peace that I hadn't experienced in a long time. My relationship with my parents has improved. They've been supportive throughout this whole ordeal, and we've grown closer because of it. Mom and I have weekly video calls now where we cook the same recipe together. It's become a ritual I look forward to. Dad has been making an effort to be more emotionally available. He even attended a therapy session with me to work on our communication. They're coming to visit next month, and I'm looking forward to showing them around my new city. There are still tough days. Anniversaries are hard. My wedding anniversary, the day I found out about the affair. But I'm learning to cope with those feelings instead of letting them overwhelm me. On my would-have-been 6th wedding anniversary, instead of wallowing, I volunteered at a local animal shelter, spending the day cuddling puppies and kittens. That was far better than any pity party I could have thrown myself. I'm not the same person I was a year ago. I'm stronger now, more independent. I've learned that I can survive things I never thought I could. And while I wouldn't wish this experience on anyone, I can acknowledge that it shaped me into someone I'm proud to be. I'm more compassionate, more self-aware, and more appreciative of the good things in my life. Thank you all for your continued support. Your kind words and advice have been a lifeline during this difficult year. Here's to hoping the next year brings even more healing and happiness. Update 3. It's been 2 years since my original post, and I felt it was time for one last update. Life has a funny way of surprising you, and these past few months have certainly been full of surprises. First, the big news. Alex and I got engaged last month. It wasn't a grand, elaborate proposal, just a quiet moment at home, which was perfect for us. We were making dinner together, something we do often, and in the middle of chopping vegetables, he just turned to me and asked. It was simple, honest, and completely us. We're planning a small wedding for next spring. The thought of getting married again is both exciting and a little scary, but I know Alex is nothing like Tyler. We've built our relationship on honesty, trust, and open communication. Work continues to go well. I've settled into my new role and even mentored a few junior employees. It's fulfilling to be able to help others grow in their careers. Last quarter, my team's project exceeded all expectations, and we received special recognition from the CEO. It felt good to be acknowledged for my hard work, especially after everything I'd been through. As for my family situation, there have been some developments. Amy reached out to me about 6 months ago, asking if we could meet in person. After much deliberation, I agreed. We met at a neutral location, a coffee shop in a city halfway between where we both live. It was an emotional meeting. Amy has been sober for a year now, which I didn't even know she struggled with. She explained that her alcohol abuse had been a factor in her poor decisions, though she was quick to say it wasn't an excuse. She's been working hard in therapy and making amends to those she's hurt. We talked for hours, crying and laughing and remembering. It wasn't easy, but it felt like the first step towards healing our relationship. We're not back to where we were before. I don't think we ever will be. But we're building something new. We text regularly now and are planning to spend the holidays together with our parents. It's still awkward at times, and there are moments when the pain of betrayal resurfaces. But we're both committed to rebuilding our sisterly bond. Speaking of parents, they've been my rocks through all of this. They're thrilled about my engagement to Alex and have welcomed him into the family with open arms. It's heartwarming to see them happy again after all the pain our family has been through. Mom has already started planning the wedding, and Dad has been giving Alex tips on how to handle the strong-willed women in his family. I haven't heard from Tyler in over a year, and honestly, I'm okay with that. Whatever happens in his life now is his business. I've let go of the anger I held towards him. It doesn't serve me anymore. Sometimes I still think about him, wondering if he's found peace or if he regrets his actions. But those thoughts no longer consume me. As I look back on the past 2 years, I'm amazed at how far I've come. There were days when I thought I'd never smile again, never trust again, never love again. But here I am, engaged to a wonderful man, successful in my career, and rebuilding relationships I thought were lost forever. My journey of healing continues. I still see my therapist, though less frequently now. I've learned to be kinder to myself, to set boundaries, and to prioritize my own well-being. I've also started volunteering at a support group for people going through divorces. It feels good to be able to help others who are where I was 2 years ago. To anyone out there going through something similar, please know that it does get better. It's not easy, and it doesn't happen overnight, but with time, support, and a lot of self-work, you can come out the other side stronger than ever. You are more resilient than you know. Thank you all for being part of my journey. Your support, advice, and kind words have meant the world to me. This will be my last update. It's time to close this chapter and focus on the bright future ahead. Wishing you all the best. Now on to the next story. Story 2. Before we start, if you're enjoying this video so far, please consider liking and subscribing to the channel. Now let's continue. After years of friendship, my office colleague ghosted me and didn't invite me to her wedding. One of my work colleagues is a lifelong friend of mine. We lived on the same street growing up, went to the same school, and when I needed a job after graduating university, she made me aware of an opening at the company she worked at. I applied, got the job, and it's been quite a few years since, and we still work together. It's a pretty small company and quite male-dominated, so after we started working together, we became really close. We take all our lunches together, we regularly stop by each other's desks for a chat, and we quickly became known around the office as inseparable. A year ago, she got engaged to her long-term partner, and I was ecstatic for her. She had a really tough time a couple of years ago, 2 family deaths close together, and I did everything I could to be a good friend to her while she was in the worst stages of grieving. She cried with me daily for weeks, and I made sure she knew I was always available to listen. I also took about a third of her workload off her voluntarily, so she could take days off when she needed to without stressing about her work building up. So now that life has gotten better for her and she's always smiling and excited, it's really nice to see. Ever since she got engaged, as expected, she's talked a lot about wedding plans, especially at our lunches. I know basically every detail. When she booked her venue, she was really excited, but she refused to tell me where it was going to be, saying that she wanted it to be a surprise. When the invitations came out, the wedding is 2 weeks away now. I've long since stopped waiting for my invitation to show up. I know when they were sent because she told me all about delivering them and shows me every day the gifts people have started to buy off their registry. I feel silly for saying it, but the more I think about it, the more hurt I feel that I haven't been included. It's a big wedding, and she has invited some other people from work that I didn't know she was even close to. She hasn't mentioned the reason why I'm not invited, and at this point, I feel too awkward to ask. I guess it's just a slap in the face because I really thought we were close, and now I'm realizing that maybe we're not. The trouble is, since all this, I've started to really examine our friendship, and I'm wondering if she even cares about me at all. I can think of 100 examples of where I've helped her work through decisions, listened to her vent, stood up for her when she's had issues with colleagues, etc. Even tons of little things like if anyone brings in cake and she's out of the office, I always save her a slice so she doesn't miss out. But I can't remember a time that she did anything for me in return. Now, when she talks to me, I've realized she doesn't even listen to me. When I'm finished talking, she just carries on with what she was saying before, almost as if I'd never spoken at all. If we're ever talking about me or something I've been doing, she never has anything to say. She just kind of nods and then switches the conversation back to herself. I'm starting to think she couldn't care less about me. She just likes having someone around she can talk at, and whoever that person is doesn't really matter to her. I've invested so many years into this friendship. It's really cut me deep. I feel used. It's also made being at work incredibly lonely because she was my only friend. I've stopped having lunch with her, and any time she tries to chat, I politely bring the conversation to a quick end and go back to work. She doesn't appear to have even noticed. I do still wish her well. I'm still glad for her that life has turned around and she's so happy, but I'm a bit lost. I'm not sure if I'm being too harsh because I'm hurt or if I even have the right to feel hurt in the first place, as I know weddings have a finite number of guests and you have to leave people out that you would invite in an ideal world. But I'm not sure there's any way back from this either. Has anyone else had a similar experience? Am I being unreasonable or overdramatic? Should I just let the dust settle and see how I feel then? Edit 1. Just to clarify things that have been asked a lot or requested to be put in an edit. 1. She hand-delivered the invites to other people at work, so I know it hasn't been lost in the post. 2. I haven't asked her about it because I'm a total doormat and scared of difficult conversations. 3. I invited her to my wedding, but that was years ago, so it's possible she thinks things have changed since then. Edit 2. This has got a lot more attention than I expected and my first ever gold from a kind stranger. Thank you. I have read every single comment. Thank you all so much for taking the time to give me advice. You have given me a lot to think about. Opinion seems to be divided over whether or not I should confront the wedding invitation issue or just let it go. I am definitely going to make sure that it isn't a mistake. But as for getting an explanation why she didn't invite me, I'm undecided. I'm going to have a think about that and the best way to proceed, but your thoughts have all been really helpful. In terms of our friendship in general, I'm not going to be too hasty to write it off. I'm going to try and put my feelings aside and see if I'm right about it being one-sided. If it is, then I will have learned a good life lesson, and if I see it as worth saving, then I'll have to deal with that the best way I can. It does seem the bigger issue here is my non-confrontational approach to my relationships. Some of your comments were hard to read, but only because I know you're right, and this is something I have to change. I've withdrawn from friendships before because they've hurt me and I've felt unable to say anything, and that's not really fair. It's a general problem I have with uncomfortable conversations. Whenever I have to have them, I basically descend into a panic, my mouth goes dry, I shake, and I can't find the right words to say. If it's a bad enough problem that I can't ask a good friend a simple question, then I can't ignore it anymore and I need to work on this. Thank you for pointing this out to me as a real problem. I'm going to find a way to get better at it. I will post an update of what happens. Thank you again. Update. So it took me a few days to decide the best way to approach this, but yesterday I had lunch with her and began and had the conversation. I started by saying, "So you've sent all your invitations out now, haven't you?" She looked immediately panicked by my question, and I knew right away that she didn't want me to go down this road. When she said she had sent them all, I asked if that meant she could show me her venue now. She showed me the website of it, including the photo gallery, and talked me through all about where everything was going to happen, all the flowers and decorations she was going to add, etc. It's a nice enough country hotel with some pretty gardens, but I'm not sure what all the secrecy was for. I probed a little more, asking who she's invited from work. The list didn't include me. I said I was looking forward to seeing the photos so I could see how everything looked. She didn't correct me that I would see it on the day, and then I was completely sure that my lack of invitation wasn't an accident. She looked so relieved when I switched subject and asked if she's excited about her honeymoon and having a rest from all the wedding stress. So I'm definitely not invited. I thought it over carefully, and I have decided not to ask why for 3 reasons. The reason is already fairly obvious. She clearly doesn't think we're anything more than colleagues, and I've misread the situation. There were some other theories suggested, for example, jealous husband-to-be associating me with her past grief, but considering everything I know about her and our history, I'm sure it's not that. I'm not sure why she didn't cool it on the wedding talk with someone she had no intention of inviting, or even just bring it up with me and explain why I'm not invited. But never mind. Having an awkward relationship at work is the last thing I want. I'm worried that if I push this and turn it into an issue that I'll look pathetic and needy, or it will just be unprofessional. I also run the risk of her badmouthing me to colleagues and mutual friends, and I will find it much easier and less messy to handle my own feelings quietly. This is a once-in-a-lifetime experience for her, and I don't want to be the source of drama that dampens her spirits at all. I'd rather just let her enjoy her wedding, make good memories, and not bring her down. And I'm fine with not going. It was never really about getting invited to a wedding. It was more having to face the fact that I'd been naive and taken for granted, and I felt silly that I'd invested way too much in this relationship. That's not all on her because she was never obligated to be my friend. Talking it through on my previous post actually really helped me work through my feelings. When I went back to work on Monday, I felt much calmer and more detached from it emotionally. I have looked back on our whole relationship, and honestly, she's always been self-involved, entitled, a narcissist. Being a bride has just made it more obvious, but it's always been there. She's also never given back to me besides helping me get my job, which, of course, I'm grateful for. In that, she's never been willing to talk me through any problems I've had, and although I help her happily with her work, she says no if I ask her for help in return. She has a few office enemies, and even though I saw her negative traits that caused her to be disliked by some people, I overlooked them and defended her anyway. Now I have put a little distance there. It's quite apparent that she's not a very nice person, and I'm genuinely okay with just moving on. She hasn't really noticed the distance between us so far, or she has noticed and doesn't care / is relieved that I'm giving her space. So I intend to just continue with doing that. If she eventually asks why, or I get the sense that she's trying to rekindle our friendship, then it will be time to clear the air with how I've been feeling. If she doesn't and we just continue drifting, then that's probably for the best. It's sad to lose a friend, and it will probably take me some time to get over it and to become comfortable with the change in our relationship, but I have other genuine friendships and plenty of colleagues who are lovely people who I can get to know better now. The main thing I really took from my original post, and I'm so glad I did post because I needed some tough love on this, is that my fear of confrontation really needs dealing with. If I can learn how to better speak my mind as things are happening, that will stop things from building and building until I have to have a serious conversation, and it makes what should have been a molehill into a mountain. I also need to figure out how to have difficult conversations without having an anxiety attack, which not only weakens my message but is extremely distressing and puts me off dealing with things and being honest with people. I had a couple of books on assertiveness recommended to me, so I've bought them to start me off. I'm also looking into going to a coach or maybe a couple of therapy sessions at least to try and better myself. I don't want to hurt other people by doing this, so this has become top priority for me. Thank you so much everyone who pointed that out to me. I was aware of it, but I didn't think it was a problem and figured I'd just be that way all my life. Now I know better. Thank you for being so honest with me. Also, thank you to those who talked me through the one-sided friendship issue. I'm a good listener, and I've always attracted people who need to vent, but I only ever noticed the one-off conversations and didn't think I was being taken advantage of as a long-term listening ear. I've been examining my other friendships in the last few days to see if anyone else is using me in the same way or if I've even been doing this to others and not have the self-awareness to realize. There are a couple of changes I need to make, including a friendship that I need to set some boundaries in and another one where I've not been giving back to the other person as much as I should have. I have learned a really valuable lesson from this about maintaining healthy relationships, and I'm very grateful for that. Edit. A few people have been asking about the books I was recommended. Nonviolent Communication by Marshall Rosenberg. When I Say No, I Feel Guilty by Manuel J. Smith. Why Men Love Bitches by Sherry Argov. Final update. It's been over 4 years since I posted my original story. I have received occasional messages since asking for an update, but I didn't expect to post one. However, my story was featured in a YouTube video yesterday, and I've had a flurry of messages. So let me tell you what has happened since. The colleague and I still work together. In the time that has passed, she has had 2 kids and took 12 months off for each, so she hasn't actually been around a lot. First, I avoided her. Looking back, I was being petty and giving her the silent treatment. I was hurt and I wanted to hurt her back. Not my finest hour, but the joke was on me as I don't think she even noticed. But then 2020 happened and we were working from home. Then she went on maternity leave, and by the time we were back together in the same office, it had all been long forgotten. At this point in time, we are friendly. I genuinely hold no grudges, but I understand what our relationship is now. I don't overextend myself, and I don't expect anything more from her than chit-chat. In the meantime, the company has grown a lot, and I have a good group of work friends. We go out for lunch, go to the pub on Fridays, and sometimes hang out on weekends. I have always had some wonderful friends, but now I have a bunch more, and these ones I get to see 5 days a week. One of the people in this group got married 4 months ago. Not only was I invited to her wedding, but also to her hen bachelorette party. I was on the photographer's list for an official photo with her, along with the other work friend she invited, and after a few drinks, she gave me a big kiss and said she was so pleased I was there. Another one of them is recently engaged, and although her wedding is a while away, I've already been informally invited without having to ask. My colleague has another work friend that she leans on now when things upset her at work. I'm no longer the person she comes to for a rant or a cry. I'm totally fine with that because it was an emotional drain. As for me being a doormat, I have grown a lot as a person since then. For a start, you really do just care less as you get older. Hitting 30 did wonders for my self-esteem and inner peace. Secondly, I have grown in confidence. I used to be terrified of letting anyone down, so I overcompensated. It took time for me to realize I am actually a really good friend. The more people I meet who like me just as I am, the safer I feel being authentically me. With this growth in confidence, I started using my voice a bit more. Firstly, just with little things. When nothing bad happened, it got easier. I could speak freely without being afraid of losing friends. There's been no major drama, but I believe if there was, I could handle it much better. Some of the messages I've received have been asking for advice. So here's my 2 cents that I learned from this whole situation. 1. Healthy friendships have a balance of giving and taking. If you look back over the history of a friendship and the balance is unevenly weighted, you should address that. Can you remember the last time you did something thoughtful for a friend or they did something for you? Who normally reaches out first? If you live a distance apart, who makes the effort to travel? Who do you spend the majority of your conversations focused on? Would you call them if you were in trouble? And if you did, do you think they would be there for you? Occasionally, evaluating your friendships is good for both of you. You don't want to be a taker, but equally, you don't always want to be the giver, or eventually, the friendship will run its course. Having said that, try to be objective and not hyper-focus on it. If your friend is going through a hard time, they're going to need you a lot and probably won't have the emotional capacity to give anything back right now. But what are they like in good times? And if bad times hit you, would they step into the giver role for you? That's what counts. 2. Not everyone is going to be your bestie. Some friendships are casual. Some are just for a season. Some dip in and out of your life. Don't expect every friend to be the best friend ever, because that's simply not possible or practical. And there's a lot to be said for these other kinds of friendships. Some people are great fun on a night out, a good person to kill some time with, where they know how to lift the mood and get everyone laughing. These casual friendships might not have much depth, but they also take very little work and investment. You can enjoy people just as you find them, and when life takes you in different directions, it isn't painful to lose them. 3. Don't give everything of yourself to everyone. Pick wisely who deserves it. Chances are there are only going to be a handful of people in your life who you can trust and love enough to pour your heart and soul into. And when it's chosen carefully, it means even more because they're so special to you. If you're currently grieving the loss of a friend who was never really your friend, I just want to give you a big virtual hug. It's not just painful but also embarrassing and confusing. It makes you question yourself and all your other friendships too. But time heals, and you have true friends just around the corner. Take care of yourselves. Now on to the next story. Story 3. Girlfriend cheats on me with an engaged man. I dump her and ghost her but won't give up. Partner started hanging out with a new friend group, which led to us drifting. Felt the breakup coming because of how distant she was becoming. Had a nagging suspicion and checked her phone to find out that she was actively chasing this guy in the group who was engaged. The story seems to be that 1. The guy was flirting with her. 2. She reciprocated and told him that we were broken up. 3. She started actively going after him. There were chats with her friends on how she should chase him. 4. The guy rejected her to stay with his fiancée in July. 5. She was still texting the guy that they should stay friends, etc. I found out and gave her a chance to confess. She lied to my face that nothing was going on until I told her that I saw the messages. This was the first time I checked her phone in our 7 years together. Drove her and her bags to one of her friends' places and went NC. I was a wreck for the first 2 weeks, but I have actually been doing better than I expected since, probably because I already subconsciously knew it was going to end. Even managed to go on 2 dates in the 3rd week. Anyway, the friend reached out after 3 weeks to say that she wanted to pass me some stuff. I agreed to take it off the friend, which ended up being a couple of photos of us and an apology letter hoping for a second chance. I read it but didn't say anything, and now she wants to meet. Truth is, I still feel something and care for her, so I'll probably meet her. She is saying that we shouldn't throw this away so easily, but I hate how none of this occurred to her while she was doing what she did. I hate how she didn't even have the decency to come clean when I confronted her. And I hate how she made this entire year between us a lie. We can't ever work because I don't trust her anymore. I don't know how to believe that she isn't back just because she was rejected. And after almost 1 year of pushing me away, I realized I haven't even felt happy while with her this year. It just sucks that I know all this and still feel like shit. My friends hate her now, and I also hate her friends because they were in the know and were okay with her behavior. Everything about this screams it wouldn't work. I know what I should and need to do. I'm just afraid I'll waver, so this post is just to hold myself accountable, I guess. She will only do it again, especially if that guy breaks up with his fiancée. Keep her out of your life. She and her friends will only get better at hiding stuff, and she will only use you. She won't change. Your ex has no morals and has no problem cheating. Block her and delete her and ghost her. You weren't the one to throw it away. She did that herself with the emotional cheating. Don't meet with her. The only reason she's reaching out is she got rejected by the engaged guy. You're her backup. She plotted behind your back with her and her fellow cheating-enabling B. In fact, I tell the friends' partners that they support cheating in this low moral character, and their boyfriends should be alert to them when they cheat. It'll just be emotional manipulation and a bunch of tears and maybe self-harm. One ended up staying with an ex many years ago because she threatened to slash her wrists in front of me. In hindsight, I should have called her parents. Ended up staying with her for 6 more miserable months. When the trust is gone, it's time to bail. Keep it to text if you still need to communicate, but I'd even say go and see. You can do much better than this hoe. Update. First of all, I'd just like to thank everyone for your replies in my previous post. I know I didn't reply to anyone, but believe you me, I read every single reply multiple times. I ended up not meeting her in the end. She reached out when I didn't meet her to express her remorse once again, but I didn't respond. Honestly, I thought about it, but when I picked up my phone, I realized I didn't know what to say. I'm emotionally exhausted and really don't know what to feel or how to talk to her right now. A part of me is still sad about how things turned out, but I'm also better in the sense that I can see the light at the end of the tunnel. Dating apps and knowing that I still have a market helps, I guess, although I'm also trying really hard not to lead anyone on, let them feel like I'm overly interested. Don't think that'll be fair on the other party. Honestly, even being on the apps themselves feels a little wrong because I know full well that I can't offer anyone anything right now. Hopefully, with a little bit more time, I can slowly wean myself off these distractions and truly work on myself. Anyway, I managed to stick to my NC, and you guys played a super huge part. Each time I doubted my own decision, each time I felt myself wavering, and each time I felt like reaching out, I went through all of your replies, and it helped reaffirm my initial decision and strengthen my resolve. So thank you once again. Good for you, mate. Focus on yourself, hit the gym, spend more time with your friends and family, pick up new hobbies and meet new people. She's already wasted 7 years of your life, energy, and time. Don't let her waste any more of it. Block her everywhere and live your life to the fullest. Wishing you the best, mate. Good for you, stay strong. She is just a monkey brancher and was trying to secure her next person because it didn't work out. She was trying to keep you. Now she wants to try to make it work after she threw it away. Also, don't you love when a cheater turns it around and says to you, "Don't throw away what we have over this." No, honey, I didn't throw away anything. You threw it away the moment you told the guy you broke up. It was done the moment she said y'all wasn't together. She's trash and messy, and she just wants you 'cause you're safe and she thinks you were a pushover. She obviously doesn't respect you. Now on to the next story. Story 4. Family's oldest son harassed and attacked me. Now I'm torn between staying for the younger kids or leaving after only 2 months. I never thought this would happen. I cannot sleep tonight because of how helpless I am feeling in this situation. I am an au pair. I started at 19, went to Australia, and took care of 2 little girls and loved it. After a year, I came back home and went to college, but I decided that I wanted to travel again because I am interested in teaching English abroad one day. I met a really great family on an accredited website that I went to last time for my au pair match and met a German family. They liked me and I really liked them and the area, and I've always wanted to go to Germany. So, after about 3 months of talking and making sure there was no other family I wanted to go with more, we went through with it. Now I am in Germany, and I have been here for 2 months. They have 3 children, all boys. A 1-year-old who's the cutest thing on earth, a 14-year-old who's friendly and sweet, and a 17-year-old who I don't really provide much care for. He kept to himself a lot and didn't talk much with me, which I didn't mind because I'm mainly there for the 2 younger ones. But some weird things started happening. I began to notice that he started staring at me a lot whenever we were alone or even at family dinner. He walks up to me at times and it sounds like he's asking me questions in German, but I can't understand him. The oldest boy can speak English. When I tell him I don't understand him, he just walks away. I asked his brother once what he asked, and he said it was something bad and he's told his brother to stop, but he won't listen. Then, over these past 2 weeks, he's made accidental contact with me. Sometimes he will brush up against me, even when there's enough room for us to not bump into each other. 1 or 2 times when this happened, I felt something on my waist like his hand, but I thought maybe it was an accident. I didn't know that they're out of school. We're alone at the house during the day while the parents work, and sometimes when I'm playing with the baby, he will come and play with the baby too. But he will be very close to me, like to the point where I have no personal space. I have had to tell him a few times to give me space, and his younger brother has even said the same thing. Still, for some reason, I thought maybe he was just shy before and was starting to get comfortable with me. I didn't want to jump to conclusions or label him as anything, so most of this I've let go. I really like hanging out with the baby and playing board games and stuff with the 14-year-old. He's a funny, nice kid. But the bad thing that really happened was yesterday. The family went for a walk, and I stayed behind because I had bad cramps. The oldest boy also said he didn't feel like walking, so he stayed behind. We were there alone, and after they had left, I tried to go to my room, but he blocked me. I kept asking him to move, but he kept blocking me. The look on his face, like he thought it was funny, scared me. He would not speak English with me when I kept asking him why he was doing this, and at this point I felt scared and went to walk the other way. I was going to hide in a bathroom until the others came back. But then he grabbed my arm and forced my body against his. I don't know if it was a forced hug or what, but I tried to pull away, but he reacted by tightening his grip, so I just froze. He let me go after a few seconds and just left the room. When the family came back, I went into my room for the night because I felt like I would just start crying in front of them. I don't know what I should do. I feel ashamed that I couldn't fight him off and that I'm literally being harassed by a boy so much younger than me. I'm scared to tell the host parents because I can tell they love their son a lot. And at the end of the day, I'm just a random girl that they've only known for 2 months. I'm torn because I love the younger two so much already and wanted to have a good time in Germany. But this boy is acting so weird. I don't know why he went from basically ignoring me to doing this. I know that despite all of this, I should probably try to talk to the host parents, probably my host mom as I'm more comfortable sharing this with her. But I just don't know how to bring that up, how to basically tell her that her son did something really weird to me. I never thought I would have to do this or be in a situation like this. And I need some help. Please. I've spent so much time and money, the plane ticket and saving up, just to come to Germany, just to leave after 2 months. It feels like all my work would just be wasted. That's why I'm trying to at least see if I can talk to the host mom. But I don't know what to say. I love the role and the other 2 kids, minus him. For some reason, my brain just can't register it as sexual assault, even though a part of me knows it was definitely really wrong. I think I might be in some sort of shock. It's really late here, and I still can't sleep. It doesn't feel that severe to me to label it that way. Every time I think about it, I feel so ashamed. He's like half my age, and I couldn't do anything about it. There's a lot to deal with. I'm away from my family in this country and now having to basically make an escape plan and worry about my safety. I'm having some difficulty processing right now. I am going to contact my agency in the morning. I just feel humiliated. I'm going to have to tell them what happened. I hope they don't ask too many questions and just see if it's possible to move me. I think also I should call my mom, but I even feel humiliated to tell her. I just feel so much shame. There's a feeling in this context I've never had to deal with before, considering the oldest boy's behavior. I wouldn't put it past him at all. Maybe he even feels vengeful towards me. My heart is literally broken, though, for the younger kids, especially the 14-year-old. By his reaction, it seems like maybe his brother ruins a lot of connections for him, but at least he has friends from school and his baby brother. It makes me feel somewhat better knowing he's not completely alone. Update 1. I received a lot of people reaching out to me asking if I was okay and if I could provide an update, so I wanted to give some closure. In short, I am an au pair in Germany and was being harassed by my host parent's son, 17M. He basically assaulted me. It is still hard for me to come to full terms with that word, but I now know at least that it was, in fact, what it was. Yesterday was my day off, and after reading through everyone's advice and everything, I contacted my agency that morning. I made sure to first get out of the house so no one would overhear me and to get away from the older boy. The younger boy, the 14-year-old, asked me if he could go with me. I was going to the library, and I didn't mind taking him even though technically he could go by himself. I see older children walking around alone a lot in Germany, but he specifically kept asking to go with me, and like I said before, he's a really good kid to be around, so I didn't mind. I was planning to go to a closed-off area and make my phone calls while he went around looking for books. But while we were walking to the library, I could tell he wanted to say something. After a while, I asked if there was anything wrong, and after a bit of a pause, he asked me nervously if I was okay and if anything happened yesterday. He said he was wondering why he didn't see me at all anymore after they came back home. I didn't say anything at first because I didn't want to tell him inappropriate information. I told him I just had bad cramps, which was true, and wanted to sleep, but he's a smart kid, and I think then he knew because he asked if it was because of his older brother. When I didn't say anything, I was so caught off guard by his questions. He asked if I was leaving. He honestly looked so sad. He said he was sorry and that he hoped I don't have a bad impression of Germany now. I almost cried because of how depressed he sounded. I told him not to worry about it and that it had nothing to do with Germany or him or the baby and that I'd be okay. So I finally contacted my agency when we arrived at the library. I was so nervous that I was shaking when I made the call, but they were amazing and took everything I was saying seriously. I just told them that the oldest child was making me feel unsafe and, in vague terms, what happened without going into too much detail. They understood, thankfully, what I meant and told me that they would work on replacing me if that's what I wanted. They also said they would reach out to the family to let them know of what was happening and of my concern with their son. I then called my mom. Being a mother, after I told her everything that had happened, she yelled at me a little, not in an abusive way, but for not telling her sooner and told me very sternly that I was not going back to that house tonight. Even being an adult, I don't argue with my mom when she uses that type of tone. She sounded so frantic and sent me money to stay at a hotel for a while until they found me a new placement, even though she really just wanted me to come home. I felt a lot better after talking to her. After a while, the younger boy came back over and told me very plainly, "I'm going to tell Mom." He would not listen to me when I told him not to or not to put himself in that situation. "I can handle it." He seemed very angry. He tried to reassure me that his parents would listen and that they know that the older brother causes trouble sometimes. They had another girl a few years ago that left because of him, and everyone thought maybe since then he'd grown up and changed. It would be different. I stayed at the library while he went home and just waited. I did not know what was going to happen. I already had a hotel booked by then and knew I would probably need to go back to get my stuff. About an hour and a half later, I left the library since the parents were at home today. I felt somewhat safe going back to get my stuff. Before I got back, I received a call. It was from my host mom. When I answered, she was very frantic. She asked me if I was okay and where I was. When I got to the house, the parents were in somewhat of an argument. I didn't understand all of it because they went between German and English, but I heard some words like "not again" and "ruining." In short, the mother pulled me aside. She said that she wasn't aware that the oldest son was still like this. She begged me not to leave. She told me she wanted her two youngest sons to have healthy attachments to their caregivers and that it was very hard for them to do this with the oldest. She was actually crying during all of this and told me she doesn't know why he acts like that, but she did not raise him like that, and that while she loved her son, she was not going to tolerate the behavior anymore. She said that once he turns 18 next week. I had no idea his birthday was next week. He will have to go live with his uncle and cousin in the Netherlands for the sake of everyone in the house. She told me the parents, discussed a bit when the first incident happened, but since he seemed to act better, they dropped it at the time. When I asked where he was, she said that he left quickly when his brother came home, saying he was going to a friend's house. He probably will not be back, and she said that even if he does, she will not let him in and will tell him to go to his aunt's who lives not that far until he can go to the Netherlands. She actually looked very sincere and stern when she said this, and even though the father looked like he was in shock, he agreed with what she said. I didn't know how to respond to them. It was not the reaction I was expecting, but I wanted to be honest. I told her that I was going to stay at a hotel for a while and that she will probably hear from the agency. I told her that I love the two younger boys, but I might not be back. She said she understood but would appreciate it if I at least thought about it for a day or two before I left. I hugged the baby and 14-year-old. So that is what happened. I am safe in the hotel now. I didn't at all expect that reaction from them. I felt almost sick with worry when I wrote my first post of not being believed, but even though the oldest boy probably won't be back and will eventually be forced to leave, I still feel the effects of what happened lingering. I still feel vulnerable and overwhelmed when I even think about what happened. I feel so bad for the younger children. I'm not sure if I should go back or not. She told me to think about it. I will give it some time and see what my agency says first about other placements. I just wanted to thank everyone for helping me through something really difficult, but I am safe now in this hotel and am not going to rush back into any situation without thinking over my options and asking for my mom's opinion. I think the mother is maybe really hurt at her son's behavior. She was crying really hard. I actually felt bad, but still, she brought me there. The only one who seemed concerned about me before any of this happened was the younger brother. A lot of his behavior makes sense now, why he would follow the baby and me everywhere and why he didn't really speak to his brother. I will definitely ask the agency that though. I hope it isn't true because otherwise they've been exceptional in all other aspects. Edit. Unfortunately, the trust with the host parents is broken. I did receive some good news today, though, from the agency. They said there are 3 interested families that would like to interview with me based on my profile. They're looking to start ASAP, and I have 2 of them lined up later today, the other tomorrow. Hopefully, things go well and one of them is a good fit. Thank you for your comment. I still can't help but think about the other 2. Though, but the night in the hotel really helped clear my head and everything. I'm gonna try to make a report and get in touch with some resources I was given. Update 2. I spoke with the agency sometime earlier today and asked them if there have been other au pairs with this family. They said this is their first time placing someone with the family, and if another au pair was with the family before, it was probably through another agency, but they had no knowledge of this, and when they interviewed the family, they were told this was a new experience for them. I am thinking maybe the other girl was through another agency. There are a few of them. I'm not sure that all au pair agencies can see the others' networks, but they said they will look further into it. They told me that, for now, they will not be placing any new girls with this family, so they gave me some peace of mind. Now on to the next story. Story 5. Am I the a-hole for wanting to leave my fiancée due to her abusive family? I've been dating my fiancée for 4 years and have been engaged for 7 months. We are trying to plan out a wedding for roughly fall next year. Her childhood was terrible and abusive, to put it mildly. Her parents were raging narcissists, and she was the scapegoat for her 2 brothers. She was abused and thrown out the moment she turned 18. She was, however, a great student and hard worker, so with some scholarships and a part-time job, she has a great career and is pretty independent. The problem is that she still has contact with her family. None of them have changed. Well, actually, something has changed. They have become more financially dependent on her. They enjoy slowly creeping back into her life and emotionally blackmailing her for support or whatever she can do. They're not pleasant about it either. They're rude, smug, and generally enjoy being a nuisance, and my fiancé can't say no, no matter the horrible things they say or how they outright try and intimidate her openly. I've always known her family history, and I've always supported her through the issues with them, but in the last year or so, they've become far more brazen and asinine. They come over to our house more often. They make messes all around the place. Her mother acts like she's the effing stepmother from Cinderella. Her dad drinks all my effing beer and empties out half the fridge. Her brothers stop by occasionally to act as mouthpieces for their parents. They practically trash the place and leave us to clean the mess. And where is my fiancé in all this? Quietly standing in the corner, practically shaking. I'm no fool here. There is legitimate trauma. There's her need to feel loved by them and her hoping they will appreciate her. Before one of you noble commenters states the obvious, she's been in therapy for this for years. I've tried to establish boundaries for nearly 2 years. I've been trying to push these ass clowns away, but this is her house. She purchased it. And no matter the contributions, financial or otherwise, will she let me have a say on who comes into her house. She's been beaten down mentally and emotionally by them for so long. She has told me recently that she wants to earn their approval, how they were right about her, how she needs to be better for them. I've had too many emotional conversations with tears and begging to count, hoping she will take the steps to get better. But she's an adult. I can't force her to do anything. I love her, but I can't help but feel so resentful of what she's doing. It's agonizing watching someone you love, someone who you know deserves so much better, openly destroy themselves for people like her family. It's been painful watching her cry herself to sleep one too many nights because of them. I've tried too many times to help her get out of their clutches, but I have to think of the future. What happens when we have kids? What happens when she is postpartum and invites them over? What happens if there is a medical emergency for either of us? What if our finances get tied and they still demand money? This is the in-law family from hell, and I won't be able to avoid them. Tomorrow, I'm going to tell her how I want to delay the wedding until firm boundaries are established. If she resents it, I walk. I can't do it anymore. I refuse to watch a slow death like this any further. Update 1. The night after I made the first post, I had decided that I was going to have a heart-to-heart with my fiancée about her family. However, she came back from work the next day early, and I already was off that day, so I initiated the talk a little sooner than I planned. Essentially, I told her how this arrangement was not sustainable. I did not feel comfortable marrying her due to how much involvement in her life her family has, and I certainly did not feel comfortable bringing a child into this world with them. I didn't want to tell her cold turkey, no contact with them, but strict limitations to start with on them coming over and what they can do around the house. I also requested couples therapy before marriage. She wasn't happy. She was just staring angrily at me while I spoke, then started yelling at me when I finished. She told me I don't understand their dynamic and it works for her. I told her that they're abusive users who will bleed her dry, and I have never seen them show any decency to her. She told me she just had to work harder for them to appreciate her. I basically yelled at her that a parent-child should not have to beg and plead and work for them to be loved. I finally told her that she sets limits with them or I walk. She was livid, and since I was living in her house, I was kicked out. So the past few days I have been staying in a hotel, and I've had my stuff taken out and put into storage, and frankly, it's been great. I am going to stay with family for a few weeks around mid-July, and after that, I'm going to go house searching for myself. I have spent the last couple of days relaxing, catching up on movies and video games I haven't had time for, and could go back from work to a quiet room without her family tearing the place apart. Yesterday, however, things came to a head. We have basically been no contact since she booted me out, but I know every Saturday her family loves to spend the afternoon over, and she uses me as a shield from their abuse. However, in a very petty move, I simply kept my phone muted all day and played Disco Elysium. I knew she would call back for help with her family, and at this point, pure resentment was kicking in for her, and I wanted nothing to do with her issues. By the end of the night, she had sent me over a dozen texts and finally 2 frantic voicemails begging me to come home. I decided to come over to check up on her. Long story short, she was sobbing in the living room, and when I came to talk to her, she was practically crushing my back, hugging me and sobbing. I gave her time to cool off and asked what happened. Long story short, her parents and brother came by to gift money from her and say horrible shit to her. She wanted to have me come over to help, but I was ignoring her, and when she tried to have one of her friends help out and everyone basically said no, that it all started clicking in for her. She kicked her family out, but not before they said some utterly vile shit to her. I won't repeat it. She kept apologizing to me and told me over and over to come home. I told her plainly that I had started to build up heavy resentment towards her for some time, and while I loved her and understand it was trauma and not her being outright abusive, there were major issues that would need to be addressed if we were to move forward. 1. She sells the house and we move. We make roughly the same amount of money, and we will buy a house together. I am a grown-ass man, and I will not live in a house I have no equal agency over. 2. Her family will never step a foot in it. They will never come over. They will be treated by me in a very threatening manner if they try and come in. 3. She gets a new therapist and we start premarital counseling. 4. She never makes me interact with her family. 5. We will go LC with her family right now, but make no mistake, we are working towards full NC on her end. I told her I love her. We have been together for a while now and have beautiful memories together, and I know she is suffering from abuse, but these are non-negotiable, and if she has a problem with any of them, then we have to go our separate ways. She told me she's realized for a while now that her family is toxic and unhealthy. She wants to make changes. She has accepted them, but some of these will take a while to see through. For now, I'm going to stay in the hotel until I head back to stay with my family. She is welcome to come over, but I have made it clear her house is not somewhere I want to go. Her and I are both off tomorrow, so we will spend the day here and maybe go out. This is obviously not over yet, but I might not post anything else until mid-August or so. Update 2. Despite all intentions of not updating until much later, with the hopes of an improved relationship with my fiancée and her establishing boundaries with her toxic family, we are now broken up. Essentially, what happened was after last weekend, where I left her for the time to deal with them herself, she seemed to finally grasp the situation and was open to changes, including boundaries and a possible move. We spent Monday and Tuesday hanging out in my hotel that I was staying in until I went back to my family for a couple of weeks. The other night, she was being very vague with texting when she originally was supposed to come over. She came much later than expected, and I knew something was up. She basically unloaded on me how I was abusive, controlling, overly demanding, and unsupportive. It took me 5 seconds to figure out she was repeating verbatim some sort of rehearsed speech from her parents, and to be honest, I was so agitated at this point, despite making a huge gamble on her, I decided to be a prick about it. I asked her if her family told her to say this. She said they suggested it to her, but she came up with it herself. So I asked her to explain in detail what I did. She said I was living like a parasite. I reminded her that I'm paying 50-50 for her mortgage, 50-50 for utilities and groceries as well. I have my own car. I pay for it. I have a job that makes just about as much as hers. Unlike her effing leech parents who demand payments weekly and raid the kitchen on the weekends. I told her to try again with something better. She looked flustered and said I was trying to isolate her. I kind of smirked like a jackass and told her that I have always supported her many friendships that she has destroyed on her own because no one wants to deal with her family or be used as a shield like me. I was practically demanding to know at this point why she is so hellbent on destroying her life for these people. She just kind of shouted that I don't understand her family and she's just trying to earn their love back and was basically ranting at that point. It's just so staggering to see up close. I have ventured into a few subreddits to get perspectives, and if you have any familiarity with them, you'll see how people who are victims of abuse by their own family can be so utterly broken by it that it'll wreck their brain to where they truly believe they are the problem and they deserve the abuse. Well, that's how she was. She was utterly broken and didn't want help. She didn't want to get better. She just wanted to get worse. It hit me like a truck, honestly, the realization. I really did feel like a fool for trying, even if it was what I was supposed to do in the first place. She was practically berserk at this point, and I was just mentally exhausted and needed her to leave before someone called the police. She finally left, but I had a few concerned neighbors check on me. Some of her friends are aware, as they have messaged me checking on the situation. I told them the truth and that I just needed to be alone to think what to do next. Right now, they have revealed that she has given them similar rants after they expressed concern for her. One had even heard that she may be possibly at risk of losing her job. She is definitely having some sort of mental break from my understanding. She is now completely isolated. She is actually sprinting into a horrible, lonely life right now. There's nothing I can do for her at this point, and as selfish as it sounds, I'm just glad it's going to be behind me. Update 3, things have kind of wrapped up, but there were some loose ends. I completely forgot to change my mailing address, which I should have done ASAP, so a couple of important things got sent to her house. I had to go pick them up, plus a final couple of items I want for my move that I left there and decided I wanted to actually take. She was being difficult and not responding to messages in regards to them, so I had to go get them from her myself. I brought a mutual friend just in case. Thankfully, she was at least cooperative and letting me get my stuff, and it wasn't much of an issue. Everything else was, though. She had a lot of nasty things to say. Telling me she was already sleeping around. Telling me how happy she was now that I was gone. Telling me she's finally free of me. How she's going to be so much better off without me. A lot of generic insults and horrible things you would only expect from a nasty breakup. And you know what? It was so obvious it was a rehearsed script from her family. And you could easily see how miserable she was. She looked like a mess. Like she hasn't slept in days. The house was a mess. She wasn't even yelling. She sounded so exhausted and broken when she said it. She didn't even smile when she said anything. Just a face contorted in hate and anger. She was not the woman I knew anymore. That person was gone. When I was getting ready to leave, she was still going on. I was fed up and told her something along the lines of, "Congratulations, your friends are gone. Your human shields are gone. Your engagement is over. Your support is gone. Anyone who ever treated you like a decent human being is gone. It's just you and your family. I hope you're happy while they bleed you dry." Probably didn't go like that, but something like it. She just stood there. Literally just stood there and looked at me with indifference and walked away as I walked out the door. As we were leaving, the mutual friend, Tiffany, asked if I was okay. I reassured her I was, and I'm just trying to get myself set up to go home next week. She also confirmed that she hears my ex did lose her job for not showing up for several days and basically ghosting them. They're going to try an intervention next week and asked if I could participate, but I'm not delaying my travel because, frankly, I just want a clean break. I know for a fact that if I stay involved, I'm only going to be witnessing the slow descent to either a full break or a suicide. I just can't do that. Despite all this, I'm actually excited for the future, and I have realized that I ignored way too many red flags at the beginning. Even with everything that happened, I know I'll be doing good, and I'm going to be all right. Now on to the next story. Story 6. My own sister ruined my life by helping my ex-wife make me pay child support for a child that wasn't even mine. I will start by admitting honestly that I hate my sister, though it wasn't always like this. Na is my older sister, and I admired her a lot when we were growing up. But over time she's shown me what a terrible sister she can be. You see, I was married to my ex-wife, Susie, for 2 years before I discovered she had been cheating on me. The revelation came as a complete shock. I still remember the moment vividly. I was reading through her messages and stumbled upon a conversation where she had been sexting with her male best friend of 8 years. Susie had always assured me that he was just a friend, someone who had been in her life forever. Despite feeling pangs of jealousy at times, I trusted her deeply. We had built our relationship on that trust, so when I accidentally saw those lewd text messages between them, I felt utterly blindsided. It was as if the foundation of everything I believed about our marriage had crumbled in an instant. I confronted her, and she immediately broke down, apologizing profusely. She insisted it was just a one-time mistake and that her friend meant nothing to her in that way. She promised to block him and assured me it would never happen again. Despite my anger and hurt, I wanted to believe her. We started going for marriage counseling because I was deeply wounded by her betrayal, and I needed to understand why it happened and if our marriage could be salvaged. In counseling, Susie seemed genuinely remorseful. She took responsibility for her actions and worked hard to regain my trust. For a while, it felt like we were making real progress. She was attentive, transparent, and willing to put in the effort to mend our relationship. I decided to stay and give our marriage another chance because I still loved her, and I wanted to believe that people could change and relationships could heal. However, as you might have already guessed, it was a huge mistake. After a while, I found out my ex-wife was trying to secretly meet up with her male best friend one evening. She had told me earlier that she was going to be out with a coworker, but something in her behavior seemed odd, and I had a nagging feeling she was lying. Trusting my gut, I decided to call the coworker after Susie left, just to check with them. To my dismay, they told me that they had no such plans with Susie. I felt a wave of devastation and confusion wash over me. It was becoming painfully clear that Susie was probably meeting up with this guy. Otherwise, she had no reason to lie to me. My mind raced with thoughts of betrayal as I tried calling her multiple times, but she ignored every call. I felt a growing sense of dread and helplessness as the hours ticked by. That night, she finally came home very late, completely drunk. I had been waiting for her all evening, sitting on the couch in our living room, my mind a whirlwind of emotions. When she walked through the door, she didn't even acknowledge me. She looked completely drunk. She just stumbled past me on her way to the bedroom, acting as if I didn't exist. I sat there feeling invisible and utterly heartbroken, realizing that the woman I once trusted and loved had become a stranger to me. Later, when I was about to go to sleep, I heard her phone buzz on the bedside table with a message notification. Susie had fallen asleep fully dressed in her clothes from the evening, clearly too drunk to even change. I gently covered her with a blanket and, driven by a mix of dread and curiosity, leaned over to check the message she had received. As soon as I saw the number, I recognized it instantly. It belonged to him, her male friend. My heart sank as I read the text. That was so much fun. We should do this more often. The message ended with a tongue and a sweat drop emoji, which only made things worse. I felt a wave of nausea hit me. There was no way a guy would send a message like that with those emojis if it didn't mean something significant had happened between them. My mind raced with all sorts of terrible thoughts about what they might have done. I felt sick to my stomach, realizing that my worst fears were likely true. I tried to calm myself, but it was impossible. The betrayal felt like a physical pain in my chest, and I couldn't shake the image of them together. I couldn't sleep at all that night. I tossed and turned in bed, my mind consumed by anxiety and heartbreak. I kept replaying everything in my head, wondering how it had come to this and what I was supposed to do next. The night felt endless, and by the time morning came, I knew that nothing would ever be the same. When I confronted Susie about that night and how she had lied, she did everything she could to avoid taking responsibility. At first, she tried to manipulate and gaslight me, claiming that my lack of trust was the real issue and that calling her coworker was an invasion of her privacy. She accused me of being paranoid and unreasonable. Her attempts to gaslight me were frustrating and hurtful, but I refused to back down. I brought up the message he had sent, demanding an explanation. She brushed it off, insisting that's just how friends talk to each other, and called me a weirdo for reading too much into it. Her dismissive attitude only fueled my determination to get to the truth. I decided to play my last card. I told her I would confront him directly if she didn't come clean to me. This threat seemed to strike a nerve. She became visibly anxious and tried to dissuade me from contacting him, clearly worried about the consequences. Finally, after much resistance and reluctance, Susie broke down and confessed. She admitted that she had been wanting to see him for a long time and that they had indeed made out after getting drunk. Her confession was like a punch to the gut, confirming my worst fears and shattering any remaining trust one had in her. She continued to justify her actions, suggesting that our marriage had become dull and that she was seeking excitement elsewhere. I vehemently disagreed, pointing out that her cheating and deceit were the very reasons our marriage had soured. I reminded her that it was impossible to return to normalcy after discovering she was sexting with another man. Despite her attempts to rationalize her behavior, I stood my ground firmly. I made it clear that the blame lay squarely on her shoulders for breaking our vows and destroying the trust we had built. I expressed my deep disappointment and told her that I had reached my breaking point. I couldn't simply overlook her actions and pretend everything was okay. Susie, realizing the gravity of the situation, began pleading for forgiveness. She acknowledged her issues but begged me not to abandon her, emphasizing that she was willing to work on herself and our relationship. Despite her promises, I realized that the trust between us had forever been shattered. The damage was too deep now, and eventually, I realized that staying was only going to prolong the inevitable. Her betrayal had created a rift that we couldn't bridge, and our marriage had been irreparably damaged. After realizing this, I had to make the hardest decision in my life, asking her to move out of my house. Fortunately, we had a prenuptial agreement in place, so I was relieved that it was going to be protecting me from any potential financial repercussions during our divorce. Despite her insistence and attempts to involve her friends to persuade me to forgive her, I stood firm in my decision and ultimately kicked her out to the streets. I know this might sound harsh to read, but I was in too much pain. Since I always thought that we would grow old together, however, her betrayal left me shattered, and I knew I would never be the same again. I confided in my parents and my older sister, Na, about what had transpired between me and Susie. They were shocked and dismayed by the news, as no one had anticipated Susie's actions, and assured me of their support to divorce her, which provided me with some comfort. However, Na seemed unusually quiet throughout all this, which struck me as odd. When I asked her for her thoughts, considering her close relationship with Susie during our marriage, she responded in an unexpected way. Instead of acknowledging my feelings of betrayal caused by Susie's actions, Na questioned whether I was certain about divorcing Susie, pointing out that, unlike me, Susie didn't have any family support. I was taken aback by Na's response. It seemed like she was more concerned about Susie's well-being than she was about the emotional turmoil I was going through. I responded firmly to Na, stating that I didn't care about Susie's support system because she had chosen to betray me repeatedly through her infidelity. I emphasized that Susie's well-being was no longer my concern, and I questioned why she seemed more concerned about my ex-wife than about me, her own brother. Na defended herself, explaining that she was simply worried about me and didn't want me to make any hasty decisions about my marriage without thinking about it. She expressed how she had always believed Susie and I were meant for each other, and that she was still in shock about our divorce. Hence, she wanted to know if I would have any regrets going down the line. While I found her response to be strange at the time, I didn't dwell on it too much afterward. The entire situation was already emotionally draining, so I tried to be more focused on getting through my divorce first. In the beginning, everything seemed to be going well for me during the divorce proceedings, and my lawyer was confident that we would win the case. But then everything changed. Susie dropped a bombshell. She was pregnant. I was completely blindsided by this revelation. It was something I hadn't seen coming at all. Clearly, life had different plans for me and wanted to hurt me more. After this news, Susie and her lawyer urged me to halt the divorce proceedings. They argued that we should try to work things out for the sake of our child. Susie insisted that she wanted to provide our child with a traditional family upbringing. I was taken aback and immediately pushed back that I didn't care about her wishes anymore and that there was no way this child could be mine. Susie's response was to argue back that she had never been intimate with anyone else other than me. She emphasized that just because she had made out with her male best friend that night didn't mean she could get pregnant from him. She continued to urge me to consider what was best for our child and to fight for our marriage for the baby's sake. However, I refused to be swayed. I knew this was a desperate attempt to derail the divorce proceedings and guilt-trip me into staying with her so she could continue to live a lavish life with my money. It was clear to me that Susie was grasping at straws, and I remained resolute in my decision to end the marriage. I stood firm, insisting that the divorce would proceed as planned. I stated that after Susie gave birth, I would arrange for a paternity test to determine if the child was mine or not. However, Susie's lawyer countered our argument, claiming that since Susie was still legally married to me and had stated that she hadn't been intimate with anyone else, it automatically made me the father of the child. They asserted that they would seek child support from me due to this. My lawyer vehemently disagreed, pointing out that without a paternity test, such claims were baseless. Unfortunately, we are all too aware of the shortcomings in our legal system, especially when it comes to protecting men in situations like these. In the following weeks, Susie's lawyer proceeded to sue me for child support, presenting evidence to support their claim that Susie had not been intimate with anyone else. They portrayed me as a controlling freak who was trying to get away from paying child support and taking any responsibility for my actions. They even brought in witnesses to testify on Susie's behalf. To my shock, among the witnesses was my older sister, Na. I had no idea that she would even be there initially. I assumed she was there just to observe and support me, but to my dismay, she testified against me, stating that she had been friends with Susie for a long time and was certain that Susie couldn't have possibly betrayed me by actually sleeping with someone else since, according to my sister, Susie was still in love with me. Na firmly stated that she believed the child belonged to me. Hearing my own sister support my ex-wife over me was heartbreaking. Na knew firsthand how much I had loved Susie and how deeply she had hurt me, yet she was there supporting Susie's deceitful actions. Later, when we were out of court, I confronted my sister about her unexpected testimony. I expressed my shock and betrayal, feeling completely blindsided by her actions. Na, however, stood by her decision, insisting that she was doing what she believed was right and that I would eventually appreciate her stance in the future. I raised my voice, expressing my disgust and anger at her for putting me in a situation where I might have to pay child support for a child whose paternity wasn't even confirmed. Na countered by arguing that I shouldn't be so cruel to an unborn child, and that I needed to consider the financial difficulties Susie would face without any alimony and child support from me. Na told me that I would never understand her perspective because I didn't possess maternal instincts like women did. She urged me to realize that providing for the child's expenses was the least I could do in this situation. I felt exploited and deeply unsettled by my sister's perspective on the matter. I couldn't comprehend how she could prioritize Susie's financial needs over the emotional turmoil I was going through. My parents also expressed their disappointment in my sister, telling Na that she had no right to go behind my back and testify against me. However, the damage had already been done. Since my own sister testifying against me proved to the court that Susie might be telling the truth and that I was trying to escape responsibility from our child. Hence, the court ruled in favor of my ex-wife, granting her child support for me until the child turned 18. I was filled with rage and refused to accept the judgment, But despite our efforts, my lawyer and I found ourselves outmatched and unable to sway the court's decision. It has been quite a while now since my divorce with Susie, and I've continued to pay child support for her son every month, who clearly doesn't resemble me in any way. Despite conducting a paternity test that confirms he isn't mine, the fact remains that because my ex-wife was pregnant while we were still married, the child is legally my responsibility. I'm now compelled to keep paying until he reaches the age of 18. This is why, throughout this ordeal, my resentment towards my sister has deepened even more than towards my ex-wife. I solely blame Nina for making me trapped in this situation. This is why I've maintained complete silence towards my sister and refused to acknowledge her presence at family events, despite multiple pleas from my parents to forgive her and let the matter go. Everyone else in the family respects and understands my stance. Several cousins and relatives share my disdain towards Na, and as a result, they also keep their distance from her. Na, on multiple occasions, has complained to our parents about how I've isolated her from the rest of the family. She justifies her actions by claiming that she did what she thought was best for the child. However, her attempts to garner sympathy have continued to fall on deaf ears, as the rest of the family recognizes her foolishness and stands by my decision. Na got married last year to her longtime boyfriend, Joshua. Despite receiving an invitation to the wedding, I didn't bother to attend. I later learned from my parents that many other family members also didn't attend, which disappointed Na. After marriage, she and her husband were trying to get pregnant for a while. My parents had expressed their excitement to me about the prospect of finally having a grandchild from our bloodline. Recently, I had to travel to a nearby town for a work conference hosted by my company. After the conference concluded, my coworkers and I decided to unwind and relax at the hotel bar during our free time. Imagine my surprise when I spotted my sister sitting with an older gentleman at the bar. She hadn't noticed me, and I made sure to keep it that way, as I was curious about her presence in a bar late at night, out of town, considering she was married. I observed as she leaned in closer to the older gentleman and whispered something in his ear that made him laugh. My suspicions grew as they appeared to be flirting and seemed unusually comfortable with each other. Without giving it too much thought, I instinctively reached for my phone and quietly snapped a few pictures. I made sure to capture clear shots of my sister's face and the older gentleman's face, wanting undeniable proof of what I was witnessing. As I observed them together at the bar, my mind raced with disbelief and confusion. How could my sister, who was married, be in such a compromising situation? I watched in disbelief as Na and the man continued to engage in their intimate conversation, sharing smiles and laughter. After about an hour, the man gestured for Na to accompany him to his room, and she nodded at him and got up to accompany him. My eyes widened as the reality of the situation sank in. I was clearly witnessing my sister about to cheat on her husband. I wanted to yell at her to stop, but from my past experience, I had learned that cheaters never learned from their mistakes. Instead, they need to be taught a lesson. After I returned home, I made the decision to directly reach out to her husband, Joshua. I felt it was important for him to know the truth rather than be blindsided like I was. I found him on Facebook and sent him a friend request, hoping he would accept it. After a few hours, I checked and saw that he had indeed accepted my request, so I immediately messaged him. In the message, I introduced myself as Nina's brother and explained that we needed to have an important conversation. I asked him not to inform my sister about my text to him and provided him with my phone number so he could call me. I hoped he would listen to what I had to say and waited anxiously for his call. A few minutes later, he called me, curious about why I had reached out. He mentioned that he already knew about me from Na and my parents but was surprised that I had contacted him after all this time. I apologized to him for not attending their wedding and expressed my regret that we were talking under such circumstances. He then asked me what was wrong, and I truthfully shared what I had seen in the hotel between Na and the older gentleman. I refrained from immediately using the word cheating as I wasn't entirely sure if Na and he had an open marriage or not, so I didn't want to make assumptions. However, as I detailed the events to Joshua, he began probing with numerous questions about what Na was wearing and who the other man was, showing clear distress. To support my account, I mentioned that I had even taken photographs of her with the gentleman, as I found it difficult to believe myself. I promptly shared those images with him to provide concrete evidence of what I had witnessed. It was apparent that he was deeply affected by the revelation of Nina's infidelity and was grappling with the gravity of the situation. After a brief pause, he unexpectedly expressed gratitude for my honesty and questioned why I would go out of my way to help him, especially considering we were essentially strangers and I no longer had a relationship with Na. His question struck a chord and prompted me to share my own experience, explaining how I had been in his position when my ex-wife cheated on me. As I delved into the details, I elaborated on how Na had added to my pain by testifying against me, leading to my current burden of paying child support for a child who wasn't even mine. Joshua was quiet for a few minutes after hearing my story. He then revealed that Na had portrayed a completely different version of the truth to him. According to her, Susie and my marriage were already failing, and we had stopped being intimate, leading Susie to make a one-time mistake that supposedly led to our divorce. I was livid upon hearing this distortion of reality and clarified to Joshua that Susie had, in fact, cheated on me twice, making it clear to him that our divorce was not solely due to a one-time mistake but that she had repeatedly broken my trust with her male friend. To my relief, Joshua believed me and appreciated my honesty and shedding light on my sister's deceitful behavior. He informed me that he had no intentions to stay with a cheating partner either and would be having a talk with Nina regarding this. In the days that followed, my parents repeatedly called me to accuse me of ruining Nina's life, as she was now facing a divorce. They blamed me for interfering unnecessarily in her marriage and expressed their frustration about not being able to have a grandchild from her. After this, I didn't hold back in the argument either. I countered their accusations, stating that it wasn't my fault their daughter was not faithful in her marriage. I emphasized that instead of fixating on the idea of a grandchild, they should focus on teaching my sister better values and morals so she could become a better person. Na also sent me a vile text accusing me of being a spiteful little boy who couldn't keep my nose out of other people's business. She even went on to insinuate that Susie's infidelity during my marriage was somehow justified and that I deserved everything that had happened to me. Her message left me seething with anger. It took me hours to calm myself down after reading her words. However, fate seemed to have its own way of balancing things because I recently learned that Na is apparently pregnant. She claims Joshua is the father, but he's refusing to take any responsibility. Joshua has reached out to me, requesting me to testify for him when the matter inevitably goes to court, since I was the one who had taken those incriminating pictures of Na with the other man. I have agreed without any hesitation, not just so I can seek revenge on my sister, but also out of empathy for Joshua. I don't want another man to endure the pain and betrayal that I experienced with my ex-wife. Since then, my parents and Nina have been relentlessly pressuring me not to testify for Joshua. They keep emphasizing that family comes before anyone. I can't help but find their messages ironic, considering Na didn't prioritize family when it came to me. I'd rather teach my sister a lesson and make sure her husband doesn't suffer the same fate as me. Update 1. I am surprised to see how polarized everyone's reaction is to my post. I can't believe that there are a few women under my post trying to convince me to support my sister even though she has clearly cheated. I would just like to say to them, shame on you. Believe me, I would have had absolutely no issues if my ex-wife had asked for child support after proving to me that the child was mine. However, she didn't. She clearly knew that the child wasn't mine since we were not even intimate at that time. Hence, she knowingly forced me to be liable for it as she couldn't afford it on her own. I couldn't prove that she had intimate relations with that other guy because there was no proof other than that one text I had found. Hence, I do hate my sister, Na, for screwing me over and testifying for my ex-wife. However, now that Na is similarly manipulating her husband, I won't stand by it. I am going to testify against her and make sure that Joshua doesn't suffer the same fate in the future. If it does come out that the child belongs to Joshua after he or she is born, I am sure he will have no problem stepping up because he seems like a nice guy, but until that is proven, why should a husband be forced to pay child support when the wife has been clearly sleeping around with other guys? Na has shown absolutely no remorse about her affair or for being the cause of her marriage falling apart. Unlike my marriage, Joshua and Nina don't even have a prenup, which means there's a possibility he might have to pay her alimony. Hence, I believe on top of this, he shouldn't be forced to pay child support for a child who isn't his. I believe I am doing the right thing, and I am glad that overall a majority of the comments under my post agree with my decision. Update 2. It's been a while since I updated anything here. Today, I provided testimony against my sister in court. I recounted everything I had witnessed her doing with the older man, presenting all the evidence and photos I had. I could feel my sister's angry gaze fixed on me the whole time, but I remained resolute. Despite her lawyer's attempts to dismiss my testimony by claiming I held a grudge against my sister, the judge upheld its validity. I hope that my testimony will have a positive impact on Joshua's case and that he won't be compelled to pay child support. However, the outcome remains to be seen. In the midst of everything that's been happening, my relationship with my parents has taken a hit. My mom called me, her voice choked with tears, after she found out that I had followed through with my promise to testify against my sister. She was clearly disappointed and told me how she and Dad were hoping that I wouldn't do such a thing to my sister. As I listened to her, I couldn't help but feel a surge of frustration. I reminded her of how they had never fought for me with such intensity when my sister had done the same thing to me during my divorce, and they had even forgiven her for everything. Yet here she was, calling me a disappointment and crying as if my struggles and burdens were nothing compared to my sister's. I went on to tell my mom that it was unfair for them to scold me for standing up for what's right and telling the truth, especially when they hadn't stood by me in the past. It felt like a betrayal, and I made it clear that I didn't need them or my dad in my life if they were going to prioritize my cheating sister over me in such a manner. Since then, I have stopped talking to my parents and refused to pick up their calls or reply to their messages. Update 3. I'm back with an update on my sister's situation. I'm pleased to report that Joshua was cleared of paying any child support to my sister. I'm sure Na is very upset. I can't help but feel a sense of satisfaction knowing that at least one person was able to avoid the unjust burden that so many others, including myself, have had to endure. I would like to clarify a few more things for the last time that people keep asking under my post. No, I don't have a relationship with Susie's son, even though I continue to pay for child support. If the son ever grows up and reaches out to me, I will not hesitate to tell him the truth about his mother. Yes, my parents and I are still not talking to each other, and honestly, I have been feeling much lighter and relaxed without them calling me every other day and accusing me of not supporting my sister. Na won't dare to confront me because I'm sure she is still embarrassed after I testified against her. Also, yes, she will be getting alimony from Joshua, which we already knew would happen. No, my parents don't have a relationship with Susie's son, since they know he isn't my child. I have no idea if they are going to accept Nina's child either, but maybe they will. That's all. Now on to the next story. Story 7. After nearly a decade together, my wife threw our marriage away by having affairs with 2 older, married coworkers, costing her the job. I, a 35-year-old male, and my wife, a 32-year-old female, have been married for about 4 years. Our anniversary is next month. We have lived in a large Pacific Northwest city for about 3 years, having moved from another part of the state. We've been together about 9 years in total, no kids, but those discussions have been ramping up this year. We've had our share of differences over the years, and there have been instances when I've been uncomfortable with some of my wife's male friends over the years, while she was in grad school and in her career. I don't think I'm insecure, but the flirting in what now seems to be a triangle, or almost seeming to make me jealous with little hints, might now make some sense. It's led to fights and disagreements, and she has a history of mood swings and some depression, and she is ADHD. She currently works at a large sales/marketing firm, and I'm in engineering. Up until a few weeks ago, I was under the impression that we had a solid marriage. Our sex life is normal, as far as I can tell, and although she makes more money than me, I never thought it was an issue. I have noticed the fights increased over the past 18 months, but over the past few months, she's been very attentive, although seemingly more depressed, and she's lost a ton of weight. She is small, but went from that to skin and bones and not eating much. I think I now know why. 2 weeks ago, I received an anonymous text message from someone that works with her. This person did not identify themselves, but given the information in the text, I'm pretty sure I know who it is. A good work friend of my wife's, who is married, that we've socialized with as couples. The text came in two parts and the sender expressed a lot of sympathy for me. I deserve to know what's going on. In short, according to the sender, my wife has been or was having a long-term affair over a year with a good guy friend of hers at work that's 10 years older than her and married with a kid. Apparently, they expressed that they loved each other, and it sounds like they spent a lot of time together, unbeknownst to me. As if that's not bad enough, my wife also started another affair with a second married guy who works for the same company and is about 20 years older than her, who has several kids. That one was going on for a few months. Someone at my wife's office caught them in an empty office one afternoon having sex and reported it to my wife's HR. Turned into a mess, and all three of them had to speak with HR. The two guys didn't know about each other, and it supposedly got ugly between them too. My wife is likely getting fired, along with the guy she got caught with. As you can imagine, I'm barely holding it together. We've had family at our house, so I've kept myself under control, and my wife does not yet know I received the text alerting me. She's also said nothing about any of this and has lied to me repeatedly over the past year about the guy who she had the longer affair with. I sensed something was up and mentioned it several times, and she just told me I was being weird. They were just friends, on and on. So I dropped it. We have different cell plans, but I figured out her password, and seeing all the texting and photo texts between the people I have now identified as the work affair people was sickening. There are also a large amount of texts with another number, but I couldn't figure out who it was. I just know it's not any of her close girlfriends because I also have their numbers. I'm at a loss and feel like an idiot. It's the holidays and family is here, so I'm keeping a brave face, but once they leave after New Year's, I just don't know where to start. I can't even understand what's going on here with what is seriously cheating, all the lying, and the manipulation she's been doing. Is there any coming back from this? Or, for those of you that have been down this road, what do I do next? I feel like I'm going to lose it at any second, and I appreciate any advice, regardless of how harsh it might be. Date 1. Thank you to everyone who has responded and reached out. It's been helpful and kind. I thought a lot about what everyone said and ended up trying to sync my work iPad with her phone, and it worked mostly. I got a chance when she went outside for a bit with our nieces and nephews and left her phone charging in our bedroom. I got lucky on the password, which was more obvious than I would have thought, and got it on the second try. Things are as bad as I imagined they were, based on what I could see, and the anonymous texter who tipped me off was clearly being truthful. I recovered archived WhatsApp chats and some ongoing ones. I'll summarize as best as I can because what I saw disgusted me and probably will traumatize me for a while. My wife was definitely sleeping with both coworkers, and neither seemed aware. Apparently, the long-term guy seems to have really liked her, but their recent convos got icy as my wife seems pissed that he disclosed the truth about their relationship as part of the HR process several weeks ago, so around when I found out and probably around the time the HR thing kicked off. She was telling him how much she loved him, but then a week later she's telling him she needs space, isn't sure, etc. Their archived messages, or the ones I could recover, go back well into 2022. They are sexual, graphic, include pics, details, etc., and always included, I love you on both sides. The short-term guy, the much older one, is worried about his job but also keeps trying to get her to meet to hook up. She's keeping her distance it seems, but some of their chats, they only went back to September, are definitely sexual, expressing sexual wants, etc. It seemed less frequent than the long-term guy, not all that emotional, just flirty and highly sexual. She also bitched to him about the long-term guy making her life complicated. A direct quote. Even though it seems the long-term guy wasn't the one who caught them, so I'm not sure how he found out. Here's what I ended up doing. I called my boss and explained what I could muster up, and I asked for a few weeks off. He was very understanding and gave me 3 weeks to sort things out and get away. My wife on Friday went out shopping and to a movie with her sister, and that's when I bailed. I packed up all the clothes I needed, some essential electronics, and a few random items and loaded up my truck with about 4 duffel bags and a few boxes. I spoke with her dad and told him what was going on. He was angry and incredulous at first, but when I shared some of the messages with him, the most PG I could find, he sort of broke down, gave me a hug, and I told him I'd be staying with friends out of town who live about an hour away. Reading those messages, I felt like I was outside looking through a window of a love triangle movie that turned into a horror movie because it's my wife leading the second life. I'm emotionally exhausted. I feel sick, and I just cannot get my head around how someone could act this way. I know I need to file, so I'm hoping one of the lawyers I contacted over the past few weeks gets a hold of me this week. Any additional advice or thoughts are welcome. Update 2. It's been a busy last week, or at least I've been trying to stay focused by keeping myself busy, by keeping my life organized as I move forward. Thank you again to everyone who continues to reach out with all the support and advice. Here's where things are at so far. I have not responded to any of her texts or calls. I don't plan to, but it's very difficult. There have been points every day where I break down, but I'm realizing, mostly through the advice I've gotten here, that nothing good is going to come from communicating with her. I want out. I'm filing for divorce, and the longer I go without having any contact is good for me, even if it feels raw right now. I have an attorney that family has helped me to pay for, and I've gone through the whole story with her several times, provided all the information she's asked for, etc. I think my wife will be served at some point in the next week or two. At least that's my understanding. The validation I got from my attorney was a relief, but she was also blunt. She said, in no uncertain terms, that my wife is a narcissist and that this is disordered, awful conduct that is really bad. She communicated that she doesn't see my circumstances too often. Multiple affairs at once, at the workplace, and lies to all involved. For some reason, that has made me feel better, like this really is as bad as it sounds and as bad as it's made me feel. Also, for those who have asked, we were renting our house, and the lease period is up after March. I emailed the landlord. It's an older couple. Let them know we were splitting up, kept it brief, no details, and would not be renewing. My friends have graciously allowed me to continue staying with them, and I'm just going to pay the rent for the next few months and bite the bullet. I can often work remote, and even though my office is a bit of a drive from my friend's place, I can handle it for a bit, I guess. I figure this is the best way to live somewhere where I feel secure, understood, and I don't have to deal with possibly seeing my wife. Finally, the last part. Maybe this was a bad idea, but I did it anyway. I made contact with the two APs. I got one of their numbers through a friend of a friend, and the other one I just called at my wife's company and got transferred through. That was the shorter term, older guy. I think he's 50 or early 50s. I introduced myself, told him we needed to talk, and that I had some questions. He panicked on the phone, seemed nervous, and said he didn't have anything to say and hung up. The long-term guy and I had 2 calls for a total of about an hour. This is the guy who's 40, I think, who my wife was really good friends with. As much as I hate his guts, I respect that he answered my questions. I'll say this, he was confident but apologetic, and I believed what he told me based on some specific details we discussed over the course of the calls. He just laid it all out there. What was shocking was the crap my wife told him about me and us. I was verbally abusive. We rarely had sex. I was lazy and checked out, etc., etc. He acknowledged that he should have never started the relationship with her and basically did so because he was miserable at home. He and his wife are now separated, and he said he came clean with her about what had gone on with my wife, but admitted that if not for the HR situation, he probably wouldn't have. He even gave me her number if I wanted to speak with her. He shared some painful things in response to my questions and was under the impression that what my wife was telling him about me was real, and that she really meant all the feelings she shared with him because their relationship went on so long and he trusted her. I thanked him, and after I hung up the phone, I just broke down again. Many of you have reached out and advised to not spend any time wondering why she did this, but I just can't get away from that topic ATM. I think I'm still in disbelief that someone I trusted and thought loved and valued me could act this way. My mind has officially been blown to bits. Doing my best to just get through each day, keep no contact going, and see this divorce process through, which is just at the beginning stages. Please keep the advice coming. It's been so helpful thus far. Update 3. This sub has been an immense resource, and combined with a therapist I just started seeing, I hope it helps me get through this in one piece. Posting a weekly update has been cathartic, and the feedback is so emotionally valuable. Thank you. Well, it's getting closer to 2 months since I got the anonymous text from what I assume was a coworker of my STBXW, informing me of her serial cheating and HR issue. The head-snapping shock and numbness has not left me, but it's getting less dense. The realization that the embarrassment, pain, and stupidity I feel is likely going to continue for a long while is tough to swallow, but I've committed to doing the best I can each day to not let it fully conquer me. If I'm being honest, I'm struggling emotionally. I'm keeping it together, but the tears flow each night, and I rarely cry, so I know this is my body speaking to me, so I just let it happen. I retained an attorney with the help of family, and a few of them attended the first real meeting with me. The initial petition or filing is done, and it's going to be served on her at some point in the next week or two. I feel good that I'm doing that now, and I know it's what's best. My emotions have been up and down about it, but I cannot raise children, nor do I want to have children or a life with someone that has the traits my STBXW has displayed. I'm committed to seeing it through. As for my STBXW, I've still not called, texted, or emailed back. The longer I go, it gets a bit easier, like I've regained some control of the insanity she dropped in my lap. I haven't gotten any calls or texts in 4 or 5 days, but I did get a long email last week, and I did read it. In some, it was a lot of "I love you" and "I realized I made a huge mistake" type of language. She said she was sorry over and over, but what struck me was that it was kind of empty. She didn't address much in terms of details about why she was sorry and just acknowledged that I never should have been intimate with anyone else. I don't know what a remorseful letter or email should say, but I think in my case there's not much to explain. It's such insane, hurtful behavior that I don't even know if she can explain it. She ended it with a statement that she's hoping we can talk things out at some point. I also ended up calling the long-term AP's wife. I took him up on the offer, and actually what he told me checked out surprisingly. It appears he was an open book with his wife once the secret spilled out. The lady was nice and to the point, said they had been struggling for years. They have now separated and will also be filing soon. It was weird because she didn't seem angry, and it was like she was relieved. Said the guy was a great dad, but they were terrible together, and that my STBXW had really done a number on him. One thing she did say that resonated, and that we discussed, is that she was very hurt that he didn't end things with her before it started. She thinks he was afraid to just get the divorce, but the affair part caught her off guard and was embarrassing because she felt like a safety net. I can relate. It's like they are afraid to risk being alone or something. The nature of what my STBXW did is far too much for me. I've read a lot of stories on here, and I've seen a few where people don't leave when they discover serial cheating and all the lies. I can't imagine staying. I'm so disgusted but also heartbroken at the same time. Also, I don't know yet if she is losing her job. I was told by the AP wife, the one I spoke to, that she's on leave, which doesn't sound good. I will post again when I can. Just trying to focus on getting through this mess. Date for. Thought I'd share the latest because this sub has been a major lifeline for me the past several months. And a big thank you to each and every one of you that has reached out individually. I truly appreciate it. Well, here we go. She's been served, and the divorce is underway. It was a huge mixture of emotions and continues to be as I waver back and forth between relief, sadness, crying fits, anger, and just about every emotion one could feel. I still feel like I'm in a horrible dream, and I struggle to realize sometimes that this has actually happened. Never in a million years did I think this would happen. Her sister and her husband, I guess my ex-wife's, have individually reached out and shared their disgust and support. Neither one of them knew, apparently, and according to my ex-wife's husband, who I was quite close with, they aren't hanging out with her. If nothing else, I appreciated their kind words, but I don't actually think they'll freeze her out forever. Nor do I really care about that part. But it did feel nice to not have them blame me or ignore me. They both genuinely seem to be at a complete loss over this. I still haven't spoken to my ex or communicated back in any way. There are still calls and texts, but they are less frequent. My understanding through the grapevine is that she was fired and is living with her parents, or will be soon, since the house we rented had the rent covered by me through March. Not sure if she's fully moved out or what, but I gather that she's struggling and has lost even more weight, but apparently she's gotten her lips done even more than what she had before, for whatever reason. Full honesty, I did read a few of the emails she sent before I had to stop. It was a lot of the "I love you" stuff, tons of apologies, but no directly addressing her behavior or why. Really, she claims she's really messed up and that she got carried away because it was easy for her to connect with these guys. She liked the attention and never meant for me to see her messages. I sat back when I read that part, and it struck me that she obviously would have kept doing this if whoever caught her at work hadn't walked into that office that day. She also claimed she never really loved the long-term AP and that she only loves me, but that's obviously impossible to accept given the nature of the messages I saw and the consistent emotional expressions of that very thing for the better part of a year. I guess if she was lying to me, it makes sense she was lying to these guys too. I don't know. It's just such insane behavior. I suppose this is more of a stream of consciousness than an actual update, but I just feel adrift. I don't want her back, but it's terrifying on some level to be in this position. Trying to understand how someone could look you in the eye and lie so consistently and pursue multiple other relationships at the same time is gutting. The long-term AP is tall and good-looking, so that doesn't help, but the other guy is a legitimate creep. Bald, muscular, but a loudmouth and definitely a dude that is always looking to hook up. It's a weird dichotomy, especially since she was supposedly happily married to me. I don't know what to make of it. I think it was just getting the validation and attention from anyone, I guess. But the more I read and the more I really think back and connect the dots, the more it seems clear that she is in the personality disorder category. I realize that the best avenue is to just move on and forget her, but that's much easier said than done. It's so hard. Trying to understand the behavior has helped me heal. That's all for now, but as always, any thoughts or advice is welcome. Thank you. Now on to the next story. Story 8. I, a 38-year-old male, was married to my wife, a 36-year-old female, for 6 years. My wife and I were old friends before we started dating. She was a close friend of my immediate younger sister, so I knew her right from when she was a teenager. It wasn't until I graduated from college that something happened, and it brought the two of us closer, and from there we fell in love. Since we already knew each other so well, our friendship bloomed, and we ended up dating and marrying after 1 year. Before my wife and I married, we agreed to only have kids once we were ready. She was the one who proposed it, and initially, I thought it would be only for the first 2 to 4 years of our marriage. I love children, and I thought she said that because she wanted us to spend more time together or get better paying jobs that would put things in place before the kids arrived. Fast forward to 5 years after we married. I told my wife that I was ready for us to have children, but she kept coming up with multiple excuses that became annoying. Either she would say something about going for medical checkups to be sure her ovaries are in good shape, or we could just get a dog instead of having a child. Her excuses kept coming for almost a year, and because we were always fighting and arguing, we started to get distant from each other. It's not like I intentionally got distant. She was the one that started it. She refused to make my meals, do my laundry, or even sleep on our bed with me, and seeing all of this made me mad. I would not have been so worried about having children if it were left for me alone. I was only concerned that her biological clock was ticking, and she wasn't saying anything about having kids. Even before we married, I'd always imagined having at least one child with her and how we'd be a big, happy family, but my wife was trying to frustrate that reality. When our arguments and fights continued to the extent that I couldn't take it anymore, we were forced to sit and talk with a marriage counselor. Our marriage was slowly falling apart, and it was the exact opposite of what I had in mind for us. All those years of being married, I thought my wife and I were on the same page, but during one of our marriage counseling sessions, I found out we weren't. In my presence, my wife told the counselor that she hated babies and couldn't even imagine having one. Also, she said she was very concerned about her body and wasn't ready to ruin her shape for a child or pause her life to care for a child. When I heard that, I felt so betrayed because she never mentioned it while we were dating, and she didn't say a thing about that even on the days we kept arguing about it. I didn't know what to do or say, so I left the session to clear my head. It was painful to discover that my wife played on my intelligence, despite knowing how much I love children. I was so mad at her when we got home that we did not speak for almost 2 weeks, and she wasn't even bothered. Around that time, she would come home late at night and go to bed. The following day she would leave so early for work. I tried as much as possible to not let everything weigh me down, but I couldn't. It really affected me. I imagined my whole life without a child because my wife cared so much about her body. The most painful part was, even when we had this agreement before we married, she never mentioned anything about not liking babies or not wanting to pause her life to raise kids. If she had told me, I wouldn't have married her because we had different, opposing values. There's no way I would have accepted to marry a woman who hated babies and didn't want one when I loved babies and wanted at least 2 children. Throughout the time my wife and I were not talking to each other, she never showed concern for me, even for one day. Instead, she would come home looking cheerful and happy, then go to bed. I had to make my meals and care for the house. Some days there were also nights my wife did not sleep at home. On those nights, she would text me late at night and say she was sleeping over at one of her girlfriend's places. I don't know which one hurt more, between finding out that my wife would never be a mother or her sleeping out and spending time with her friends while neglecting me. Months after my last counseling session, our marriage got worse. Our arguments started again, but it got worse this time. My wife became something else, and anytime we fought, she would say I could go ahead and divorce her if I didn't want us to be married anymore. Every time she said this, it broke my heart because I thought it would be better to fix things instead of divorcing. I didn't understand why she kept saying that until I made a shocking discovery. One day, I received a call from my bank about strange charges on my account. When I checked it out, I saw that the charges were going into an apartment complex I had no idea about. I told the bank I had no idea about the apartment and tried to get them to charge back. After talking to the bank people, I decided to go and check out the apartment myself since it was in the same town I lived in. It didn't make sense for someone to charge my account because I was careful not to leave any of my bank or card details online. After driving for a while, I successfully located the apartment and decided to go to the apartment to see who was using my information to pay rent. When I knocked on the door, a young man in his early or mid-20s came out. When he opened the door, my eyes caught a glimpse of my wife's picture hanging directly on the other side of the wall. I was so confused, and the guy started talking before I could ask the questions in my head. He said he knew I was my wife's husband because she was his sugar mummy. Immediately I heard that, I had goosebumps on my skin, and my lower stomach turned. He said my wife rented the apartment for him, and I had to keep my mouth shut or he would steal her completely from me. Talk about audacity. I couldn't even confront him like I had in mind, but I had a better idea. I was so mad at his audacity, so I began searching for his landlord and found him the next day. I reported everything to his landlord, and several days later he was thrown out of the house. As for my wife, after I found out about her AP, I didn't even say anything because there was nothing to talk about. I began to reconnect the dots and realized my wife had been cheating on me for a very long time, but I was too blinded to see that. My wife caused me the most pain, so I couldn't let her go scot-free. I filed a report to the police, and my wife was arrested for identity theft and eventually charged. We also divorced because I realized we were like water and oil, and she no longer had a place in my life. I now understand why she kept saying I could divorce her if I wanted. It was because she had someone else in her life and was using my money to pay his rent. This happened to me a very long time ago, and as I share this, I have a beautiful 3-year-old daughter and I'm married to a beautiful younger woman. After things ended with my wife, I was down for a year plus, but I realized that I was living in the past instead of the present, so I decided to build the kind of life I wanted. I have never been so relieved and happier. Now on to the next story. Story 9. My fiancé tried to cut my implant out while I was asleep so we could expand our family. Throwaway account because I don't want this attached to my regular account. Anyways, I, 25F, have a 2-year-old son from a previous relationship. After I gave birth, I was asked about birth control. I said yes, please, and now I have Nexplanon, a birth control that gets inserted into your upper arm. I was told it lasts 3 years. Cut to now. My fiancé, 27M, told me he wants a baby. I said I did too, just not now, and that I'd get my Nexplanon out after the 3 years are up, and I won't replace it. This wasn't soon enough for him. He wanted me pregnant now. I stood firm and said I'm not ready to have another baby. I want to be a little more stable, money-wise and in general. My fiancé was mad, and we got into a big argument. I brought up my son and told him my son sees him as a father figure, that we already have a child to take care of while my birth control runs its course. All of a sudden, he started shouting at me, saying he wanted a baby that's biologically his, and that every time he looks at my son, he gets angry. I asked him why, and he told me it's because he sees my ex in my son. My son looks a lot like his father. He then went on to tell me he doesn't feel like a parental figure to my son. He has no personal attachment to him. He says it's because my son isn't biologically his, and he resents us for this. Hence the baby talk. He wanted my arm implant out immediately. I said no way. I'm not ready for another baby yet. We continued to argue about this until I'm finally tired and frustrated. So I say I'm done arguing and just head into our bedroom. An important fact to know is that I take medication to sleep, a pretty strong medication with a high dosage. It knocks me flat on my ass. The Sandman comes and slaps me across the face, so I'm down for the count. After the argument, I take my pills and I go to bed. My fiancé was still in the living room when I fell into a deep sleep. Now, another important fact. My fiancé knows where my implant is. He's felt it under my skin, as it's very noticeable when you're feeling around for it. I'm sleeping when I stir slightly awake after I felt fingers on my upper arm. Prying with my eyes still shut, I tell my fiancé to stop poking me. I assumed he was just being petty and childish because of the fight. He doesn't stop, and not 5 seconds after poking me, he presses down in the exact spot my next planin is. At this point, I'm starting to get more alert and annoyed. I just wanted sleep, and I can't do that when I'm being jabbed. I open my eyes to see what the hell he's doing and ask why his finger is pressing directly on my next planin. The minute I opened my eyes, I noticed an object in his free hand. A box cutter, which was very close to my upper arm. Now I'm on full alert, and I ask him what the hell he's doing. He immediately looks guilty and tries to throw excuses at me. I was just trying to scare you. I was checking to make sure you were alive, and it's a coincidence I'm holding the box cutter. I called on every excuse and said I wanted the truth. He looked down, then told me he was doing me a favor. What favor? Glad you asked. He was going to remove the Nexplanon from my arm. He said he studied how to do it and he's confident he can safely remove it. He said we can start expanding our family now. No need to wait 8 months. I am livid. I immediately shouted at him to get the hell away from me and don't touch me. He tries to talk to me, but I keep yelling. He needs to leave. He can't stay at our house right now because he admitted he was trying to cut into my arm, thus breaking my trust. Finally, he walked out of the bedroom, and a minute later, I heard the front door open then close. It's been 3 hours, and he still hasn't come back, and I don't know what to do when he does. I don't know where we go from here. I love this man dearly, but I don't think I can forgive and forget this. I don't know what to do. Advice, please. Edit. I called my mother, and she said I can stay with her, so I'm taking my son and leaving. I can't respond to every comment, but just for a few quick questions. He's never acted like this before. He's always been so gentle and kind to me and my son. The argument and then the box cutter is completely new. During the fight, I hoped he was just in the heat of the moment and saying things he doesn't mean because he's angry. I was hoping, naively, that he'd be back to sweet, kind, the next morning and apologize for the hurtful comments and trying to overstep my boundaries. I honestly didn't think he'd come at me with a box cutter. A lot of people saying I should already know what to do, so I guess my IDK what to do should really be phrased. Has anyone had anything remotely similar to this happen to them? I guess I might have also wanted reassurance that leaving is the best thing to do instead of waiting for him to come home and trying to talk it out. I love this guy deeply, and it's just hard for me to put both pieces of the puzzle together. The sweet guy I knew and the awful guy I saw tonight. Update. Essentially, my now ex-fiancé did a complete 180 personality-wise. Was so sweet and loving to both me and my son until we fought about having another baby last night. He said horrible things and I was tired of fighting, so I took my trazodone and went to bed. Woke up to him touching my arm implant birth control with a box cutter in his hand. Said he was doing me a favor, but I screamed at him to leave. I ended up leaving last night with my son to stay at my mom's. I was confused, shocked, hurt, scared. I still am. At 7 this morning, my phone started buzzing like crazy. Texts, calls, voicemails. All were from him asking me where I went and when I was coming home. I didn't respond. I just don't even want to look at him or talk to him again. He called my mom while we were both sitting in the kitchen discussing everything. She asked me if I wanted her to answer it. I said I just didn't want to talk to him. My mom ended up answering, and my ex was yelling, sounding panicky. He said I left with my son last night out of the blue. and he's worried. No mention of our fight. He asked when my mom last heard from me, and she lied and said last night. He made a noise over the phone like an angry sigh and said he was going to keep searching for me, that he's worried something bad has or will happen to me and my son. When my mom hung up, she pulled me into a hug. I guess I had started crying and didn't realize it. She was still hugging me when she asked how I wanted to proceed. If I was done with him for good. I said I was, and she nodded and told me the first thing was to go to the police. Like a lot of you said, I didn't have any proof about the box cutter situation. It would come down to my word versus his. If he had even nicked me a little, I'd have a case against him, but since he technically didn't hurt me, the detective said he'd seen cases similar to mine thrown out. The officer did bring up ex-parties and suggested I get one for both me and my son immediately, and I went to the courthouse to get the paperwork filled out. I had to detail as much as I could remember from last night. Every word and action. My mom helped me, and we got them turned in and moved on to the next step. Calling my landlord. I've been living in the same house for 2 years. The first year was a lease, and now I pay month to month. Everything is in my name, and most of the furniture is mine. I told my landlord what was briefly going on and that I was putting in my 30-day notice. My mom has a guest room that she's insisting I stay in. After getting off the phone with him, I called the utilities and closed my accounts. Water, electric, gas, internet. Next, my mother asked me what I wanted to do about my belongings. I told her I don't want to leave anything that's mine. All important papers, knickknacks, clothes, furniture, all of it. I just didn't know where to put it, so my mom suggested a storage unit. Once that was decided, we had to figure out when to start the move. Mom ended up calling my 2 brothers, and they both agreed to help me move. Just give them a date and time. I told them definitely sometime this week, and my eldest brother suggested a police presence, just in case. Think it's called a civil standby, IDK, but I agreed. By this point, it's getting late in the day, and I'm as drained as I can get. I just wanted to go curl up with my son and try to sort my thoughts out and calm down. The county clerk ended up calling me, telling me the judge granted my ex-parties. She told me that I needed to come pick up paperwork which had the court date on it. She also mentioned my ex-fiancé would soon be served and told me I don't have to see him again until we go to court to make the ex-parties into permanent restraining orders. She suggested lawyer NG up, but I'm officially burnt out on today. I'll look into lawyers tomorrow, but tonight, after this update, it's a cuddle in bed with my son. Night. A couple of things that I've seen repeated. Why didn't I leave right when X started saying those awful things about my son? I honestly thought he didn't mean them. He's told my son he loves him before. Part of it was also shock, I guess. I couldn't believe what I was hearing, and that I was hearing it from someone who I wanted to spend the rest of my life with. I didn't think he truly had hatred in his heart, and it never crossed my mind that he would hurt me or my son. He's never even spanked my son. I just thought we needed a cooling-off period, so I removed myself from the situation to take my meds and sleep, naively thinking things would be better in the morning. People also questioned why I would even bother sticking around to try to talk things out, and that's a valid question that I don't have a rational answer to. Part of me thought I was dreaming, I think, and the other part is the side of me that thinks everything equates to being my fault. Like I was too mean during the fight, too stubborn to see things his way and try to understand his feelings. IDK. It's late. Everything feels surreal, and I have this pit in my stomach that feels like dread. What if X shows up at my mom's house? I still haven't returned his messages or phone calls, and now he legally can't contact me anyways. I've had 2 of my best friends call, saying X called them. My younger brother, who I guess has always hated X but I didn't know that until today, said even he got a call. So far, everyone is saying they don't know anything, but I'm scared. IDK. I'm sorry. Just thought I'd update. Update to the update. So many people offered great advice that I'd never think of myself. I've been kind of heavily relying on my mom to guide me through this and keep me and my son afloat. I've also been given several things to read, which I am absolutely going to when I have some downtime. I appreciate every comment, from extremely helpful to well wishes, and even the ones questioning the validity of this. To be honest, and it's a horrible cliché, but if it wasn't happening to me, I probably wouldn't jump to believing either. Sometimes I let my emotions get the best of me, and I end up sounding either very in my typing or very unnecessarily dramatic, so I get the mistrust. My update last night was written late. I was exhausted, but I wanted to let the people from my original post know I took their advice and got out of there. My emotions have been so conflicting and chaotic. I'm surprised I was able to sound coherent, let alone like a teenager writing fanfic. I wish this was a fanfic. I could feel safe again. My mom has been an absolute angel, and I've shown her some of your comments complimenting her. And she definitely deserves it. Never once did she make me feel I couldn't be completely honest with her. She's reopened her house to me, even though I moved out years ago. She's really kept the ball rolling on everything with her organization skills. She made a list, and yesterday we followed that list to the letter. When I wanted to put stuff off, she gently reminded me of what could happen if I paused. X could find me, hurt my son, or anyone helping to protect me. You all are very right, and I'm ashamed to say I didn't realize just how much support I have and what a tremendous family I have. A couple of people mentioned to be careful if X finds out where I am, and my mom and brothers already had a plan for me. They called it round-robing. If X found me at mom's, I'd flee to my eldest brother. If he finds me at my eldest brother's, I'd temporarily stay with my younger brother. Really? I appreciate you all commenting that I'm doing things right and quick and how impressive it is. But that's not my doing at all. That's all on my family. They're the extraordinary ones. There goes my fanfic cliches again. Going above and beyond for me and my son. Some of the comments that questioned my validity remarked that it was odd that I immediately went to Reddit to see what to do, how to feel. You're all right. That it's unusual, but not for me. I grew up when LiveJournal was a big thing. Writing helps me organize my thoughts, and I figured this community would help me understand, and I was right. Another thing I want to address is X's sudden change. I'm now wondering what to do for that. I don't want him in my life still, but some of you mentioned a brain tumor or a psychotic break, so I'm worried. I sent X's mother and father a message this morning saying I broke off the engagement and left, but both messages are still unread. I don't know what to say to them in regards to X's health. Will they be mad for daring to say this might be a breakdown? Will they actually take him to get tests run? And if they even tried, would he willingly go? I don't know. I guess I need a little more advice about how to broach that there's more to address. And I even had a consultation with a lawyer today, but I can go into that another time. I'm still processing everything. It still doesn't feel real. It feels like a badly written teenage fanfic, to be honest. IDK. Sorry for rambling again, guys. I just wanted to let you know I'm taking notes from your helpful suggestions. That I'm not ignoring you guys. My mother took my son for ice cream and let me stay behind, which is why I decided to hop on Reddit and check on everything. One last thing though, the awards. I'm truly humbled and grateful for them. Some of them I had to click on to see what it meant, and they're all so sweet. I'm endlessly thankful for the awards, your comments, and your messages. Thank you. Edit. When my ex was served his papers, he did not take it well. I had already blocked him on everything, but he took a picture of his papers and posted it on Facebook with a message to me and my son. A mutual friend saw it and that it contained my personal information and screenshot it to let me know. After taking advice, I called the police to see if it was a break in the X part. They made an incident report and told me I could pick it up the next day at the police station. They didn't arrest him. My mother had already procured me a great lawyer. A shark, which is what we need, in her own words. I told my lawyer about the screenshot, and he immediately put in both his appearance on my behalf and a motion for contempt of court for breaking the X part and threatening me and my son. Our original official court date isn't until next week, but the judge got us in early to deal with the screenshot. X showed up without a lawyer, and I showed up with only my lawyer, due to no extra people allowed in the courtroom. I really wanted my mom there with me, but my lawyer, instead of sitting on the bench at the sides reserved for lawyers, sat by me, kept himself between me and my ex at all times. A BFF was there as well. I guess it's standard procedure to have one in court. My lawyer advised me to let him do all the talking, only answer questions when directed at me, and answer them as succinctly as possible. The judge ended up giving X a warning, saying if he even mentions me or my son, he'd put him in jail 24 hours for every incident until the official court date. X was also ordered to pay my legal fees for the emergency session. Friday, we got mine and my son's possessions out of the house with massive help from friends and family. I knew X had to work Friday, and we arrived with a police officer, just in case. An hour after X should have been at work, we left. Anything that he could claim as his or that we bought together and I didn't care about, most of the items went into 2 different storage units from the same place. The reason we chose these storage units is they're gated and locked at night. The items me or my son would need for everyday use went to my mom's. X's parents have opened my messages now, but they still haven't responded. My lawyer said we're still on for the official court date next week, and nobody has entered their appearance yet on behalf of X, so we're unsure if he has a lawyer or not. My lawyer told me it would follow basically the same as the first hearing. It'll be a general hearing with other people having filed their own X parties for other people. No extras allowed in the room. Face masks required. He'd keep X away from me. No talking unless answering questions. Give succinct answers unless asked to clarify. He's confident that the X parties will become permanent restraining orders, but he warned me it's not like it is in movies. The restraining orders will go for 1 year unless a box is marked saying to reissue it every year. I marked the box. He also said for every year X has the ability to appeal it, and we'd have to go to court all over again. For now, I'm just trying to keep my head above water. I'm kind of afraid because I've had people message me to tell me they've seen my post on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Some of you sleuths have even found the state I live in. I'm just hoping X doesn't find any of the posts and puts 2 and 2 together. I'm sorry I haven't responded to every comment or message and that this update is late. I've just been trying to keep my son's life as normal as possible. It breaks my heart when he asks when we're going home or where Papa is. He just knows we're having a long sleepover with his Mimi. He's loving having pets around though. We weren't allowed to have animals at my house, so the fact that my mom has a dog and a couple of cats, he's excited. I've warned his daycare about my ex. Most of my family and friends are aware there's a serious situation, but not details. IDK. It's been a long week. I'm exhausted. I keep looking over my shoulder, and I've made my mom buy extra locks for the doors. Some have mentioned cameras for the outside, and my mom has already started pricing some. She said her sister, my aunt, has been trying to get her to try Ring for months, so this is the kick in the pants she needed. I'm sorry the update is late. Still feels surreal, but I have to just keep swimming. My son is obsessed with Finding Nemo. We have reached the end. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to like and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this, and give us your thoughts about the stories in the comments section. Thank you and see you in the next video.